Has he actually recorded yet?
Well, unfortunately, I missed the juicy bit. Just
Damn
always a fraction too late, aren't I?
No one needs to know my real age. I'm a woman, you don't see this.
Well, look, it's sometimes the truth hurts. All right. Before I was so rudely interrupted by Carly noticing that I was trying to get the recording going so I could catch her out, we were talking about the fact that we're up to episode 19 already.
Isn't that crazy?
Like we're legally of age here. Now, I haven't plugged in the headphones. My bad.
I'm tangled. Hang on.
Well, that's not my fault. You mean tangled? We're organised, I promise. We've got it all together. We do.
I can hear myself. Oh, you didn't knock over the water for once. Well done.
It's amazing. And speaking of water, you know, I realised, like, I know you're in charge of the podcast and everything, but I just felt like you were kind of a little too in charge, like controlling my water, and I had to not drink it too fast because if I run out of water and then I need some water, it's a problem. So
I'm a type A personality. This is expected.
So up yours. This is my bid for freedom. I'm now a strong, independent man who don't need no woman.
You're drinking out of plastic.
Well,
People are going to come for you for that.
This is lightly sparkling.
Yeah.
Now I can drink as fast as I want, and the duration of the podcast will be limited by the strength of my bladder.
And I was going to say something else. I won't be childish. All those bubbles might cause chaos.
Look, there could be some issues. There might be some teething problems. We're in uncharted territory, and now that TV has stopped working because I still haven't. Oh, there it is. Seriously? Seriously? There we.
What is it? What is it we're doing? Are we breathing?
If you could stop, that'd be great.
So what we've got is for anyone that's listening to this as opposed to watching it, we have a monitor in front of us that tells us which camera it's on. And as we've advanced technologically, we now have temperamental technology.
Yeah.
So it's one thing for us to be technology illiterate. Now we have...
Oh, yeah, technology that is technology illiterate.
Yeah, technology that just intermittently decides not to work. But...
Like right now. I mean, the timing on that, Carly, the timing on that.
Perfect.
All right. However, I have now, after 3 weeks of saying, I'll do it, I just ordered before the show the new cables.
Excellent.
And they're due to arrive on Friday, which means we'll have time to install them for next week's show.
Brilliant. So what you're saying is we can get started finally.
Incremental improvements. That's been the theme for over the last 19 episodes, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, we had
has been incremental improvements.
We had someone asking us why we aren't on Rumble yet. I'm like, guys, I'm one person.
Yeah.
Please let me get through 1 week without having some steep learning curve.
Like we've finally got a machine to do the editing for us. Just like give us a break.
Let me enjoy just having 1 week where I'm not having to like fumble my way through some new interface.
Yeah. But look, we are making wonderful progress. And you sent me a notification. We've had, I think, 6 people download us on the podcasting platforms.
6?
I think that's what it said, wasn't it?
It was actually last week we had 2,500 downloads.
That's a cumulative total.
No, that's for last week's
in the
episode.
Week.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are actually you're actually watching.
Yeah. Well, no, they're listening.
Well, listening. That's a little bit scary.
Yeah, that's what I said to G. So just before we turned the cameras on, I have got insomnia at the moment. I'm not sleeping well. And normally I fumble my words and I have a bit of a laugh.
Yeah.
I'll say Monopoly and it comes out Monopoly or something like that.
Now we are broadcasting Monopoly to the world.
Now I'm like, there's actually people listening. I'm getting a little bit self-conscious. So if I mince my words up, it's because I'm literally not sleeping at the moment. So be kind.
So do we need to like put you on some drugs or something to help you sleep?
Well, I think I have finally admitted to myself I may have bitten off a little bit more than I can chew.
Well, I was just thinking because we could call Macron or Starmer or Mers, and I think that they'll probably have some medicine for you.
I wanted to start the podcast with like a napkin and just be like,
"Oops."
But I was like, maybe people will think I'm actually doing cocaine.
Yeah. Well, yes, no comment.
So, but
well, fantastic. And in the vein of obviously incremental improvements, me bringing my own damn water.
Yeah.
We need to do good news.
Good news.
What is your good news, Carly?
What is my good news? Yes. This is a funny one. I'm going to make you watch it on air. And don't worry, guys. I will timestamp this and put it on screen so you guys can watch it. So my good news starts with a video.
Oh, dear.
And You are going to watch it first.
I'm in trouble already.
Yeah. Melbourne, once the world's most livable city, is on the fast track to becoming Gotham City. And aside from the youth crime, vacancies in the homelessness crisis, and the crazy amounts of tax that has people fleeing the state, I thought it was about time that we have a monument to celebrate this descent. And no, I'm not referring to the Daniel Andrews statue. I'm referring to this burnout car that is on the corner of Springvale and Greens Road. As a photographer myself, I am somewhat of a fine art connoisseur, and I cannot think of a better contemporary way to display decay. And to be honest, this new monument is actually putting our taxpayer-funded monstrosities to shame because we're getting a twofer here. Whilst this is a beautiful illustration that we are in fact becoming a socialist hellhole like California or Venezuela, it's a wonderful dedication to the great Australian tradition of it's not my job, mate. Now, for those of you who have absolutely zero context what I'm talking about, this is obviously a burnt-out car and is sitting right on the gutter of a slip lane at a major intersection. It has been there for over 6 weeks now. It has a canary on it and, hilariously, also an abandoned car sticker. You think? Now, I am grossly aware this is due to some bureaucratic process where there's some paper pushing involved in determining whose responsibility it is to actually move this car. What I find so quintessentially Australian is that the local council worker who has mowed the lawns has mowed around the car, allowing nature to just take the car as its own. But in all seriousness, when did we all start accepting such a low standard in our state where we'll just drive around burnt-out cars on our way to work and just be like, she'll be right? Like, is this genuinely what we want as a state or a country, just to live in a world where this is acceptable and we just go, not my problem? As they say, the standard you walk past is the standard you're willing to accept, and apparently we all want to live in a third world shithole.
It's just waiting for a mate, Carly. It's just waiting for a mate.
I kid you not. So for context, guys, I'll put this up on the screen too. This is a burnout car that is literally on the gutter of a slip lane at a major intersection. Like, it is on the little concrete bit and then it's tarmac or like road.
Yeah.
And it has been there for 7 weeks and no one seems to care or no one's doing anything about it. And, the council worker has mowed around it. So that's how long it's been there.
Can I just say, it's wonderful to see that Jacinta Allen is really cutting back in the areas that are unnecessary, like arts spending and that sort of stuff. Because even if she bought that car new, that's only a $30,000, $40,000 monument, which I mean, in that particular case, is way cheaper. But even if she did, like, she could put that monument on every single corner and still be spending less on public 100%. Artworks than what she already does. So
exactly,
the budget cuts, I approve.
Well, funnily enough, that reel I put up went viral.
Oh dear!
And
you don't have a happy relationship with Instagram reels going viral.
Every time it goes viral, I'm like,
what was viral in this case?
About 100,000 views.
Okay, all right, that's not too bad.
Across Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah.
But funnily enough, the next business day back, that car has been removed.
Oh.
Yeah. So I
what a coincidence.
I may have ruffled some council worker feathers.
Yeah, probably.
And the car got removed. So that's my good news. It only took me making an Instagram reel and it going viral to get that.
Well, you are really changing the world now.
Yeah.
And I'm being really rude to you and sending a message to my wife to say I'm already recording to see why she was trying to call me. So hopefully it's not an emergency and we don't have to pause or okay, cool. So
your good news.
Oh, goodness. I did not come prepared for this. It's just such a surprise after 19 episodes of starting with the exact same thing, of me having to think of what my good news is going to be. Look, I do have some good news if you're an accelerationist. You familiar with what an accelerationist is?
We talked about that. I think I am one.
So an accelerationist is just basically someone who says the world is going to hell in a handbasket, and the sooner we can get to the collapse, the sooner we get to the rebuilding.
Yeah.
And I did a video last week basically pointing out why Susan Ley is part of the problem with Australian politics and not part of the solution. Not that I think Angus Taylor would have been much better, but I think he would have been less bad in the same way that I think Dutton would have been less bad than Albo. So it seems that Australians have chosen the path of accelerationism. Mm-hmm. We have a Liberal Party led by Susan Ley. We have a Nationals led by David Littleproud, who I've had a lot to say about over the journey. He's absolutely terrible in my opinion, and has been a disaster on the water issue, which I care a lot about. We, of course, have the Greens, who just selected a new leader. I didn't even bother to find out who that was because I know they're going to be terrible. And we have a Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. So what I think is really nice about this, the good news is Australia has chosen the accelerationist path. We are going to dive as quickly as we possibly can for Venezuela, and hopefully not get stuck there the way that Venezuela did?
Look, once we talked about Susan, I went and had a look into her and I was just like, you know what? Just bring it on.
Bring it on.
I've said that to you. Like, bring it on. Let's go. We know what's happening. Let's just...
All right, Carly, you win.
Yeah.
You win.
And it's, look...
We're all accelerationists now.
Do you know what really alerted me to this as well is that when I go and read the comment section, like if I ever see something pop up like that, I'll go read the comments and just see what the general pop is saying.
Yeah.
And it's actually really alarming how few people seem to believe that we are on that decline.
Sure.
You know, like even though it's blatantly screaming in front of us, there are so few people that are impacted across the board. Like maybe one thing's annoying them, but like relatively speaking, they're okay. And they're like, no, this is a great thing. At least, you know, he cares about the climate. And no, I think it's a really good thing for us. And Australia needs this. And we've rejected Trump politics and we've rejected conservatism. Australians are on the right path. And I'm like, okay, well.
Yeah, you do you, buddy.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, I think I say this every podcast. Some people just have to learn the hard way.
The tragedy is that the rest of us are lumped in with them.
Yes, it is frustrating.
The analogy I give is that there comes, if you're trying to save the Titanic by repairing the holes in the hull, but all of the other passengers are down there with sledgehammers making the holes bigger, there has to come a point where you just go, okay, you know what? This ship is going down.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Australia is there yet, but I'm making some calls and I'm scoping out what opportunities exist elsewhere. Not that I expect to need them in the next 3 years, but I think if we have another 2 electoral cycles, so 2 more elections without a radical snapback, then yeah, we're doing the full trip. We're going all the way down before we come back up.
It does alarm me. You know, for example, the ABC yesterday, or maybe not yesterday, like early days last week, posted something like 24,000 Victorian homes or renter homes have left the market.
Yep.
And meaning that the landlords have sold. And I went and read the comments and it was bizarre. It was something like, oh, the Murdoch media has now infiltrated the ABC and we've got like this conservative take on the property market.
Right.
And then there are other people going, so what, 24,000 homes are now back into the hands of first home buyers? Like, how's that a bad thing? Or owner occupiers?
Yeah.
And very few people seem to grasp what this actually means for our state. It was very much like me, we need. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. So let's dive into that because there are people who will be sitting there going, well, yeah, but that does mean 24,000 homes are back in the hands of owners. And that's absolutely true. But what that misunderstands is the favour, essentially, that landlords are actually doing. And people are going to hate me for saying this, but I did a video on this in 2019 before the world went mad. The largest charitable housing program in the world that is allowing people to live in houses they cannot afford is the thing called the rental market, where people, renters are coming along and paying less than the holding costs of the house. This is why people rail against negative gearing. Oh, negative gearing needs to be abolished. No, negative gearing is proof that that house is costing the owner of the house more than the renter is paying them. They're losing money on that house. That person renting that house, they can complain all they want about the cost of renting, but they can't afford to buy. And if that rental hadn't been available, they would have had to move even further out or to something even smaller or something even worse because they are not covering the actual costs of that house. So when we say, hey, we've forced 24,000 landlords to sell up and now those houses are in the hands of owner-occupiers, fantastic. But that will help those who are what economists refer to as at the margin. So the people who could almost already afford to buy, when 24,000 more homes come on the market and maybe prices get held down a little bit, they are able to jump in. The person that is nowhere near being able to afford to buy, the person that really needs rentals, is getting absolutely fucked. Absolutely screwed right now. The rental crisis is getting way, way worse for those who actually need rental properties. Only those who are already at the margins, already almost out, they're getting helped at the expense of the people further down the tree.
I think the problem is, and this is something that we go into in a second, but we've got to talk about what we're talking about this podcast.
Yeah.
We've gone straight into the first topic. This wasn't even a topic.
This wasn't even a topic, yeah.
You know, when like I said, I often read the comments purely because I want to get an understanding of what people are thinking. And it's very much this sort of pop culture politics where they grab a headline, they take that verbatim and they go, that's it. It's very superficial.
Yep.
There's no more thought beyond that or what it means from a 5-year, 10-year look. They very much go, this is a problem today, we need to resolve it. And when you do that, you're basically band-aiding everything and you're kicking the can down the road. And I do think in 5-10 years' time, these same people who cheered these policies on will be like, it's so unfair.
Yep.
There's no houses. Where are we meant to live?
And they won't see the connection.
Yeah.
So this is what's referred to as first order, second order, and third order effects. So politicians and bureaucrats write their policies based on the first order effect. If we regulate the cost of rental, if we regulate rental prices then and keep them down, then rental prices will stay down. That's the first order effect. Fantastic. The second order effect is people who were, again, investors who were at the margins, who were like, oh, I could get an investment property, but it's a bit dicey. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. They're now going to go elsewhere. Now, that might be celebrated by people who say, oh, but that means that property ends up in the hands of an owner-occupier, and we've already dealt with that. But the other thing that investors do is they pay to get new property built.
Yeah.
About 50% of these new suburbs popping up in the outer east of Melbourne and around our capital cities and our regional centres, about a third to half of those are being paid for by investors. If they bow out of the market, which they are doing in droves here in Victoria, then now new houses are not being built. That's the second order effect, is that houses aren't being built. And the third order effect is now the owners of the existing rentals that have decided to hang on, well, they're going to do what they did in Queensland, where Queensland brought in rules around how often you could increase rents on an existing tenant. So now what the landlord does is kick the tenant out.
Yeah,
because
that
they can set whatever price they want
happened to me.
on a new incoming tenant.
Yeah.
And this is the reality of the second and third order effects. It's the effect of the effect, or specifically it's the effect of people's reaction to the effect, and then the effect of people's reaction to the effect of people's reaction to the effect. And by the time you get to that third layer deep, now you understand what that policy is really going to do.
Yeah.
But politicians never think that deep. They only go to the first layer, and that's why almost everything the government does turns to shit.
And so does the average person. When I say they're superficially thinking, they're thinking about this
first
current
order
issue.
effect only. Yep.
That happened to me with my last house that I was in. I was really happy there. I'd been there 3 years. It'd been like a steady increase, like $10 a week, $20 a week.
Yep.
And then they basically said that when those interest rates came in at the middle of last year, they were like, the landlord's going to sell, and which I thought would be happening because I already know that she overpaid for the property. And it was just for context, it was a 2-bedroom freestanding unit that was built in the 70s that she bought in 2021 for $910,000. A 2-bedroom unit. I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, it was a lovely renovated. They'd done a great job in fixing it up. I was very happy there. But when I learnt that it was almost $1 million property, I was like, are you kidding me? Anyway, so the interest rate crunch really hurt her. And I knew it was her investment property. So they put it on the market and she wasn't getting anywhere near the offers that she needed. She was not only going to lose, she was going to lose massively. So in the end, and it was Buxton Real Estate, they put so much pressure on me to move out. They're like, it'll be sold in a week, you'll be gone, the new owners will move straight in, it's just better for you now, we'll write you a reference. They were literally pushing me out. And when I went onto the rental market, I think I've told this story roughly before, my partner and I had kind of just started dating and I was like, and we had talked about maybe moving in together, and then all of a sudden I was like, help. And so he's like, well, we'll just move in together. Worked out really well. But then it was all of a sudden the stress on me as the renter. I understand that the landlord had stress too, but it cost me personally $11,000 to move. And then Gareth obviously had his cost. And then we were looking at houses. There was nothing. I got priced out of Hampton. I just couldn't live in Bayside anymore. It was just not financially viable. And so we ended up further away. So I'm now further away from work. Gareth's further away from work. And yes, we do have a nice home, but we're paying a lot of money for it. It's bigger than what we need, but it was also what was available. We couldn't find that perfect 3-bedroom townhouse. It didn't exist.
Yeah, and this is...
Oh, sorry, and to add to that, they put up the price at my original property by $180 a week.
Yeah.
$180 a week.
And this is this is inflation at work. This is our dollars being devalued. This is just the total mismanagement of the economy, but also... You cannot protect renters by hurting landlords.
Yeah.
You don't do that. You don't accomplish that goal. You can help renters by making the holding costs of an investment lower, which is one of the things that negative gearing does do. But high interest rates and high inflation leading to a collapse in the value of our dollars is not going to be good for renters. And none of this stuff that they're doing is ultimately good. The end result of all of these policies is that it hurts the very people that they claim to be trying to help because they don't look deep enough into the effect of the effect of the effect.
You just remind me of something that, so Gareth and I both were in rentals, and in his rental property, he'd been there 12 years.
Yep.
And he was the first person to move in after it had been built. It was a townhouse. And it was an older gentleman who owned it, and he owned it outright, no mortgage, nothing. And they had the same real estate agent up until I think halfway through last year. So it was weird timing for both of us. And it was Jealous Craig who took over and they bought out the Nationals, was it? Or the Professionals or something? Yeah. Anyway. And then all of a sudden Gareth gets this notice that his rent's going up by like $100 or $150 something. It was a lot. And he was quite friendly with his landlord. And his landlord was like, you're being a great tenant, like happy with you. And he was on a great rental pay,
Sure,
like
which
rate.
is why the jump was going to be so big.
Yeah, and like to be fair, he was probably paying below market rate.
Yeah.
But as soon as the new people came in, they were just like, put that straight up. Yeah. I think there's and having met plenty of real estate people, I think they thrive on that extra dollar as well, and that's making things a lot worse.
That's how their performance is judged. But I'm not against the idea of trying to maximize returns. Maximizing returns, I don't have a problem with. There are companies that choose to go a different path. There's an American company, the name of which I can't quite think of, that famously hasn't put their prices up. They make some sort of a snack, a little Twinkie bar or something like that, and they haven't put their prices up in however long. And the owner, who's now quite old, is like, well, we paid off all our machinery, we don't have any debt, we're still making money at that price, so we're going to leave it at that price. I mean, fair play to you. That's great if that's what you want to do.
That's very honourable.
Yeah, but I don't have a problem with people trying to maximise their financial returns. Money is a language. It's a very important part of our public discourse, and it's a very price signals are a very important way of making decisions and sending signals into the marketplace so we can meet each other's needs. I don't have a problem with any of that. But when you have an economy that at the most fundamental level is collapsing, where we do have inflation that is way higher than the official inflation rate, the official inflation figures ever since 1980, when they changed how they were calculated, have been absolute nonsense. They're absolute fantasy. Our real inflation rate, my gut is that it's at least 2 to 3 times higher than the official inflation rate. And that's reflected in what's happening in the property market. That's what's reflected in what's happening with rents. And unfortunately, that's now kind of baked into the cake, because that deficit spending and the money printing to fund the deficit spending is now kind of baked into our budget. So when your fundamentals of your economy are collapsing, you're going to see $150 a week jumps in rental, not because the house is really worth that much more, but because your dollars are now worth that much less.
Yeah. So this was great, but none of this was on my notes.
None of it was, no.
Not even a bit. But
and I promised I was going to be good this week, and I've already broken that promise.
We are useless. No, it's okay. So episode 19, our topics. We should have like a little celebration next week. Episode 20.
20 episodes. Do you realise that 26 episodes we will have been going for 6 months?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of scary.
What a commitment.
I tell you.
Okay, so today's topics. Hey guys, future editing Carlz here. In true Carlz and Topher fashion, we didn't stick to any of these things. We kind of meandered and segued and tangented our way through this entire podcast. So if you actually want to know what we talked about, here is the list, and it's also in timestamps down the bottom. You're welcome. Clementine Ford versus Abbie Chatfield.
Oh, my favourite.
I thought you could not be more excited to get into that topic. It's worth covering. And also, just a little pointy finger.
Just kill me now. Put me out of my misery.
No, this is important. Little pointy wiggly finger to some of the people in your comments who were like, last week were rolling their eyes about the mention of the Labubu dolls.
Oh, yes.
My issue with some of the older generation, and I don't mean this to attack you, I'm merely bringing this to your attention, is that you will snub your nose at culture things.
Yeah.
For example, this feud between Abbie and Clem, and be like, oh, it's not worth our attention. Unfortunately, it actually is, because when you take your finger off the pulse of the cultural zeitgeist, you become unaware as to what is genuinely influencing the direction we're all going. And unfortunately, people like Clem, people like Abbie are incredibly influential, particularly in young women. And if you ignore this, you are basically taking your your hand off the steering wheel.
So this is kind of the tension between populism and elitism, and obviously elitists getting out of touch, and someone like a Jordan Peterson and these guys all talking amongst themselves and getting increasingly out of touch with the common man is an example on sort of our side of politics, so to speak. But the thing that makes me different in this whole populist and elitist thing is that as an elitist, I am actually better than everybody else, whereas the other elitists really aren't. They only think they're better.
Yeah.
Whereas I really actually am. And so that means that I can turn my nose up at things like this, and it's completely fine.
Okay. Yeah. Well, at least there's honor in being self-aware.
Right. No, I know. It's a curse that I wear well, though. Yes. Okay. Fine. Fine.
The hell up. That's how you know we're at episode 19. I'm very comfortable. Just
shut up. Just shut up. Stop it.
All right. Next one is Dan Andrews and John Setka spotted together at a wedding.
Yes. Now, this is great
No,
because...
No talking. God damn it.
Sorry.
I'm going to annoy some followers because I just said the Lord's name in vain. Sorry. Susan Ley becomes the new Liberal Party leader. Don't say a word.
That's not a word. That's not a word. Wow. I just got the silent treatment and it actually worked.
Macron, Starmer and the German Chancellor allegedly with a little baggie. We'll get into that. The Stuart Highway being shut down over two people doing target.
Stuart Highway, yes. Sorry. Target practice, yes. The army were called.
Yep. US-China trade tensions
eased.
Eased.
Yes, quite interesting, that one.
Keir Starmer backflips on immigration policy. Peter Dutton's taxpayer-funded retirement package. We've already talked about the burnout car. That was great. Letitia James under federal investigation for mortgage fraud.
Who?
Letitia James, the Attorney General that came after Trump for his civil case.
Oh, okay.
Is now under criminal investigation.
Oh, wow.
Now just keeping you up to date.
Yeah.
And Trump's new executive orders on drug prices.
Yes, interesting.
I don't think we'll get through half of this.
I very sincerely doubt that, but let's give it a red hot go.
But just letting you know, like that's what we want to talk about.
Yeah.
All right, first one, we're starting with what I want to start. Okay. Abbie versus Clem.
Okay.
All right, it's worth mentioning I have skin in this game.
You do, and you've kind of studiously avoided bringing this up because... I'll say it, Clementine Ford can be a very unjustly savage so-and-so and really, honestly, does not, I mean, she tries to pretend to be morally superior in so many different ways and she does not live up to her own standards at all. But you've been kind of talking around this. So most people watching or listening won't really know any of that history. Is now the time?
Yeah,
is
why
this
not?
where it all just put it on the table?
Why not? I am
Excellent.
opening myself up for
Wow.
another public...
let's go. Round
another
two.
public
Ding, ding, ding.
execution
Yep.
from Clem. So
Yep.
Clem, if you're watching...
Oh, no, she's busy. She's busy.
Well, I don't know. I am one of her favourite punching bags. So, you know, or maybe I've been dethroned.
Yeah,
Clem, you let me know.
I mean, this is how we find out.
Yeah. So when the whole COVID thing was happening, Clementine Ford left a comment that was pretty nasty on my reel that was going viral, like my post. And I had never met her. I didn't know anything of her. I just saw this particularly nasty comment and thought nothing of it. And I was like, who the fuck are you, Block?
Yeah.
That was as much thought as I put into it.
Yep.
Who are you, Block? And then apparently that was the cardinal sin because then that sent her on a rampage.
Oh yeah, you can't let her know just how powerless and irrelevant she is.
So she's like, this person's blocked me. And then she started to go a deep dive into me.
And you're a so-and-so.
And then, I kid you not, I think it's over 100 stories on her Instagram about me, just like trying to put all this stuff together and defame my character. More on that in a second, Abbie. And Clem made it a public execution to the point where she basically, like rabid dogs, set her followers on me. It has been an ongoing thing. These people, now, just to be fair, and to avoid any potential lawsuits, Clem has not done anything to me physically that I'm aware of. She has said very heinous things about me on the internet, most of it untrue. Some of it has some truth to it. I'll give her that. But just came after me with a level of aggression that was just so unwarranted.
Women are so much nastier to other women than they ever are to men, and frankly, than men ever are to women, at least not in my experience.
The only thing that got me off Clem's radar was Nadia Bartel's cocaine scandal. That was the only thing that distracted her.
Thanks, Nadia. Appreciate it.
I've got to send a message to Nadia for that. But when that was all happening, I mean, I was preoccupied with everything else that was happening, but I never looked at Clem's stories about me. I was told about them. A friend documented them, and of full transparency, I got an immediate IVO against Clem, my ex-business partner, and another person who were trolling me online. Clem doxed me. She put up so much public information. My address was leaked. My phone number was leaked. So much so I ended up moving house because of this.
Yeah.
It was, again, being careful. Clem didn't do this herself. It was her followers. rape threats, death threats, coming to my house, parcels sent to my house. They were calling my clients, getting me fired. Every time I posted something on the internet, they will call that person or message that person or email that person. Not just one. I'm talking hundreds of emails to these people, to the point where they were trying to get me so isolated, I put myself in exile. It came at a level that almost cost me my life. Yes, Clem, you're welcome. You made me suicidal. I hope you feel really good about that, because I had never in my life dealt with that.
Yeah.
I'd been bullied before, but not publicly, not like that. And I know the problem with someone like Clem is I do think she is heartless, and I don't think she gives a shit, right? Her ideology trumps everything. We'll go into that in a second. But when I say I've got skin in the game, I did take an IVO and it was immediate. It was 3 months. And then at the court hearing, I think I've told this story before, as soon as the judge walked into an empty courtroom with a mask on and then sanitized his hands, I knew straight away I was done, because Clem painted me as an anti-vaxxer, a COVID denier, and then that was it. The judge hated me. I knew it from the second it happened. But, it doesn't matter. For 3 months at least got her off my back. And then what's the first thing she did once the IVO was...
Well, I think we talked about this before. Yeah. She went on a spree.
Went on a spree and came after me. And then I made a comment about, I think what Grace Tame did was distasteful. Clem came for me for that.
Yeah.
And so she posts, this is Clem's ammo, right? And this is what I mean about, if you ignore this, you don't recognize how much power these people have. And I hate saying that because she'll thrive on that. Clem has, I think, about 250,000 or so followers. I don't know. I don't even look at her stuff. Everything I hear about her is either in passing or, because it gets put on the news or whatever. But she has mobilized these followers who are absolute sycophants for her to go and do her bidding for her. So if Clem says go, they charge.
They go. Yeah.
And when they do it, it comes at a level of ferocity that is like untenable for someone who's not prepared.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't a public figure when this happened to me.
Yeah.
I had no idea this level of abuse was possible to just like random Joe Schmo. And it was also because I was anti-lockdown and I was very outspoken.
Yeah.
So of course I was enemy of the state at that point, as we all were. But over the years, I have wisened up. I've become a lot more confident, and I look at Clem and I go, she can come after me today, and I'll just be like, okay, yep, good. Next.
But this is the thing. This is why I kind of disagree with your statement that we have to pay attention to these people because they're so powerful. They are powerful within a very small soapbox. And this is where my whole thing about you're not the idiot whisperer. You can't save. There are people that you can't save. The people that are coming after you, the Clem Ford acolytes of this world, are in the deepest part of the idiot bin. Right.
You're right. But the problem is, I'm lucky I had someone like yourself and other people around me to help me through that. That was a very difficult time.
Sure.
If you're not someone who's supported like I thankfully was, that could end you. It really could. That's what I mean by powerful.
Sure.
Can she sway the election? Clem can't. No. That's why she hates Abbie. We'll get onto that in a second. But no, you need to kind of know where these things exist in society, because this is how it metastasizes and infiltrates. Clem has made a generation of women hate men to the point where every misstep a man makes is misogyny. Everything's the patriarchy.
I view that a little differently.
Okay.
Clem has profited from, has monetized and leveraged off a generation of women who were already taught to hate men. She has gathered women and has fed them.
Look, I will say this about Clem. Clem, you're welcome. She is intelligent. You know, and I don't like when women are underestimated. Clem is intelligent, and she can be well-spoken when she's not angry. And whilst I disagree with her wholeheartedly on most things, I do think she presents a good argument. I'll give her that. She's trained as a journalist. She's an author. Credit where credit's due. Doesn't mean I have to like her or agree with her. But what I don't like about Clem is she has no moral boundaries. She will go that extra bit just to cause chaos.
My point, though, is there's a world of difference between someone who creates a bunch of, in this case, men haters, versus someone who is a magnet to men haters. There's a world of difference between those two.
Is she the magnet or is she the architect?
I don't think Clem has changed much, has influenced people's thinking much. She has polarized people. The people that already think on that wavelength have joined in her band of merry women.
Her 2 books were pretty well received. I can't remember what they're called, like Think Like a Boy or something.
Sure.
Like they were...
but again, my question is, were they well received by people who read them and went, wow, you've completely changed how I see the world, or by people who read them and went, you've expressed what I already thought?
Truthfully, I don't know enough about it.
Between those two things. So someone like myself, I could have built a much bigger following if I just tried to be the lightning rod to gather people that already agreed with me. I don't. If you look at my work, I am throughout my work, even from the documentary Battleground Melbourne, etc. I'm trying to start by meeting people where they're at, which is not where they don't already agree with me, and bring them across to where they.
You're trying to be the olive branch.
I'm trying to actually influence people. Yeah. And so there's a difference between someone who is actually influential in the sense that they are changing how people think versus someone who is an influencer who is in truth actually just gathering an audience of people that already agree with them.
I don't know enough about it. Sure. I just know what the public knows.
So let me get to my ultimate point, which is, in order to be a public figure, and this is something that Abbie Chatfield is learning now the hard way, and it's amazing to me that she was naive enough to not have already understood this before she even went on reality TV. If you want to be in the public eye, by definition, a public figure, you know what the working definition of a public figure is? It's anyone that a large proportion of the population feel entitled to have an opinion about, even though they've never met.
Yeah.
Right? And so if I was to say, what do you think of Carlz Soda? Oh, who? And if most people are, who? You're not a public figure.
Yeah.
But if people, I hate her guts, but did you see what Clem Ford said about her? No, now you've got status. You're a public figure. You might be a hated public figure in some circles and a loved public figure in others, but you're only a public figure once people feel entitled to have an opinion about you.
As someone who sort of like got thrust into that, I wasn't really prepared for it. Sure. I think Abbie, we need to tell people what's actually happening. We'll get to it in a second. All right. Abbie, on the other hand, rose to fame through reality TV, but I've got some context here for you guys.
Let's do that.
Essentially what it is Clem is, she's Gen X too. I think this is worth noting. Clem is Gen X, Abbie would be Gen Z. So there is 2 generations between them. That's a big part of it as well. Clem sees herself as a really hard-hitting, online activist. She does, and she's called out Abbie for being performative with her politics and doing it all about herself. She's called Abbie a narcissist. Of course, everyone's a narcissist these days. It's soft progressivism, and it's all about, Abbie just platforming herself and monetizing it and making herself famous or whatever.
Coming from Clem Ford, that is hilarious.
The whole thing is hypocrisy. It's just so hypocritical. But anyway, so now I don't know what started it. The reason I became aware of this is someone posted Abbie's reaction on X. And, it's always, I try and play the devil's advocate, because if I was in Abbie's shoes, she's very clearly distressed in this video, right? She's hysterical. She's hyperventilating. She's struggling to breathe as she's crying hysterically and saying all this stuff about Clem. Now, having context for Abbie, I felt very little empathy, but we'll get into that in a second. Abbie's put this reaction video, which, by the way, I think was 12 minutes or something. It was long. I don't know. I don't time these things, but it was long. And as she's speaking, she's getting progressively more upset and more hysterical. And in the end, she's begging Clem to stop coming after her. And then...
Why would you post that?
Well, that's Gen Z. That's what they do. Everything now needs to have an audience. So there's a few things here. They're both feminists. They both have a successful audience. They've both done things in the public sphere. One's an author, one's a journalist. The other, she's a reality TV star, then a TV host. And apparently Abbie's now got a book deal with Penguin, so she'll be an author soon. You know
why this is happening? It's because Abbie got an interview with the Prime Minister.
Well, that's what it looks like. It's a jealousy thing.
She's threatened.
Yeah.
Clem Ford thought that she ruled the roost. Nothing threatens a feminist more than a successful woman that isn't them.
Yeah.
They will cut down other women the minute they come anywhere near them. They will absolutely savagely attack. It's amazing to watch, and we're watching it play out here.
I think what we're seeing here as well is that difference between the 2 generations. Clem's had to do this the old-fashioned way, writing articles, getting published in newspapers, you know, becoming an established writer. Abbie just sort of like put in an audition tape and like did some stupid stuff on TV.
To be fair, she has then since built on that.
Oh, I agree.
There's plenty of other people that have had the same opportunity that Abbie
Clem
had
will
and didn't build
this.
on it. Yeah,
you know, like, oh, you just did it because you got Instagram.
But she just did it the new way, that's all.
Yeah.
But what's amazing to me is how can anyone put themselves in the public eye? Like, hey, Clem, if you want to come after somebody, please come after me. Like, honestly, you'd be doing me a huge favour.
She did once, didn't she?
I don't know. I don't pay enough attention. I don't care. The way I see this is people like Clem Ford, people like Abbie Chatfield, people who want to get involved in these fights, they are self-selecting as seagulls, fighting over the chips. Right?
This is how I saw it. This is the analogy I had. You think of it as a funnel, right? Like you were talking about being the lightning rod. What I think it is actually, they're trying to funnel people into their audience, and there's a purity test.
Yeah.
At the top of that funnel is people like you and me, the centrists, the moderates, the libertarians, conservative leaning. They basically discard us as the right-wing nut jobs, right?
Sure.
We're all in that. So at the top of the funnel, we're already gone.
Yep.
And what you have is eventually it becomes a bottleneck. You've had that purity test to eliminate anyone that doesn't ideologically or politically agree with you. So now you're all stuck in this little pond. And now you have to reestablish that hierarchy. How do you do that?
You have to find the differences amongst the people that are left.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then you cannot be progressive enough. And I think you're seeing that between Abbie and Clem now. Clem sees herself as literally the top of that hierarchy. She's the first. She's been there the longest. She's the most vocal about it. And she also, to be fair and get to give her props, she doesn't back down.
Yeah.
Like Clem goes in for the jugular.
Yeah.
You know, whereas
whether she's right or wrong, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
But also add to that, the internet loves conflict. I've said for ages, if you want to have, if you're young and single and you want to have one of the biggest YouTube channels in the world, get together with 3 other people your age, become housemates, all live in the same house, all right? And each of you start up a YouTube channel about how much you hate your 3 housemates and just spend all of the time. You can be the best of friends off camera. Spend all of your time making videos, doing mean things to each other, pranking each other in really cruel, distasteful ways, being mortal enemies on camera. And I guarantee you within 2 years, at least 2 out of those 4 channels will be in the top 10 YouTube channels on earth. People love conflict. And so the Clem Fords of this world, and I would also say, for example, Candace Owens of this world and others, they rise on the back of creating conflict where it doesn't need to be. Now, let me finish my comment about seagulls. They are self-selecting as seagulls fighting over chips. And they don't understand people who self-select as eagles. Now, of course, in the real world, you get born as an eagle or you get born as a seagull. But in the online world, you can choose. And yeah, there was a time when I used to get caught up in the squabbling over chips, and then I stood back and went, hold on a second. I can soar to a level that these people don't understand, don't comprehend, and then I can go and hunt in whatever hunting grounds I please and come back to my nest and enjoy a nice peaceful meal while they're still fighting and arguing over who got the last chip.
Yeah.
Let them.
Yeah.
Let them squabble. They will never understand me anymore. I used to be one of them.
Yeah.
But they will never understand what I am or what I'm becoming.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good analogy. I think I said this like a few podcasts ago when I was covering the House and Habit versus Candace Owens thing. There's something about, I don't know how to say this without sounding like I'm trying to tear these women down, because I'm genuinely not. I'm just trying to, because I don't think this way, right? There are plenty of people who do podcasts like you and I. There are plenty of people who are better than me as a photographer. And I genuinely am just someone who's always trying to learn. Like, you know, I don't look at anyone and go, oh, geez, they're my direct competition. How do I like take them out? I've never thought that way. I think with some women, you know, they grow their platforms, whether it's Candace Owens, House and Habit, Clem Ford, Abbie, whoever. Yeah. And there's a level of hard work, yes. And there's also a level of timing and
Clem
luck.
Ford has worked hard to get to where she has.
I'm not discounting that.
Absolutely.
But there's also a level of timing and luck, right? So, you know, they all sort of come together, and then you build a platform, and then you're relatively successful. I would say anyone with an Instagram account over 100,000 is very successful because you get put on the radar, you get book deals, you get, you know, you get to public speak, whatever it is, right? And you can make of that what you will. Some people do it really well. Abbie has done very well. I think she's got 600,000 followers. She's on national TV. I would say that's very successful. And so then what happens is you're already kind of at the top of that totem pole in Australia. And we've talked about this before in many ways. Like you either make peace with the fact you're as high as you can go in Australia and that's it, or you go overseas. Like you move to LA, like so many people do.
Yep.
With Abbie and Clem, you know, Clem's kind of been at the top of the feminism totem pole in Australia for a decade or more, maybe. I don't know. I don't know enough about her career. And then you've got someone like Abbie who's trying to climb up the ranks, and she's doing so a lot quicker than, say, Clem would have. And I would say that's just because of the internet age and social media.
Different time.
And so now there's, you know, and the House and Habit, same thing. You know, Candace did it the old-fashioned way, and House and Habit did the social way, right?
Yep.
And so you get to this point where you've established an audience and you have a bit of pull, and then all of a sudden you turn to your competition and go, right, like, you know, now I can take you out. I don't know if that's a conscious thing. I don't think any of them are going, I'm going to do this. I think it's a level of insecurity of going, how do I establish this? I don't think men do this. Maybe they do, but not that I can recall quickly.
Men do, but you're going to see it more often in business than you will in sort of that personal profile. So businesses try and do this all the time, where they will become a very large, successful business, and then they'll cozy up to a government regulator to try and regulate their competition out of existence.
That's not personal.
No, it's not. But that's what I'm saying is you'll see men do it, but they'll do it more at that level. And look, some will definitely do it at that personal level as well. I mean, Machiavellian men who, you know, actors or politicians. I mean, politics certainly attracts men who are like that. You know, according to a post that I saw on X, I have no verification that this is true. But according to that post, Tony Abbott apparently offered to run in a lower house seat for the Liberal Party and was denied by the Liberal Party leadership.
Okay.
That would be an example of those guys closing the door going, no, Tony, you'd be a threat.
Yeah.
Right? We can't have you in here because then you'll get the top job sooner or later, and I want that top job.
Yeah.
So that would be an example of exactly that sort of gatekeeping, correct. But I do think that women have a particular savagery towards other, and especially women who call themselves feminists, have a particular savagery towards other women as they become successful.
It's almost like a get out of jail free card. I'm a feminist. I'm pro-Palestine. I'm all about women first, men, you know, fuck the patriarchy or whatever it is they talk about. This is how much I don't know about it. I can't even get your words right because I'm just not in your line of thinking in any capacity. But that's kind of their MO, right? So if you tickle, I always talk about the scout sash. You know, you're wearing your sash, you've got all your patches, therefore it excuses your poor behaviour.
Yeah.
I think Clem, more than often, exhibits really bad behaviour. You know, it's the way she does it.
Yep.
She's dislikable. And people could say that about me. I'm polarising too, absolutely. But there's a level of brutality in her words. And she does it from this like intellectual podium where she'll talk down. You know, she's articulate. She can use all the big mean words. And for the most part, the average person will be like, I actually have no idea what she's saying. Abbie, on the other hand, presents herself as a little bit more common man. And she did make a comment that in this like breakdown video where she's like, my mum's a school teacher. And she taught me that if you can't communicate it simply using common words, you don't understand it yourself.
And she's absolutely right.
And I would agree.
Yeah.
And I think I've said that to you. And this is something
talked about it.
I talk to all my clients about whenever I'm helping them build their personal brands. I say to them, stop talking over people's heads.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I say this, particularly about industry speak. You know, if you're a real estate broker and you know all the industry terms and you're talking to a layman, they have no idea what you're talking about.
If you're talking to another person in the industry, sure, have at it. But not when you're trying to communicate with the public.
And I always say to people, stop flexing for your peers or your colleagues and talk to your client.
And we've talked about that. You can either impress people or you can communicate effectively with them. You can't do both.
It's not about trying to flex your intellectual capabilities. It's more so, did that person understand your message the way you tried to convey it? And so Abbie talked about that, and she's like, you know, Clem, you know, she comes across all intelligent, blah, blah, blah. I don't know her exact words. You could go watch the rant. It goes for like 13 minutes or whatever. But she did say some things in there that I agree with. But what I found really hilarious, and I actually want to cross to this video. I'll pop it up on the screen, but Topher's going to watch it on my iPad. This is from a YouTube account called Bearing, so Bearing, and I've got to remember that people are listening and not watching.
Yeah, not watching. They can't always see everything.
So sorry, guys, if you're on Spotify or Apple, I'm going to try and explain what we're looking at. So the video is called Unhinged Feminists Cry, Bully Melts Down, Abbie versus Clem. And just I thought the opening part of their video was really good, so I'm just going to play this for you quickly.
Please stop dehumanizing me. Uneducated, disgusting, sexist pig men. I don't understand why she's so adamant on proving that I'm awful.
You are deeply unlikable.
I don't get it.
Unintelligent. Ugly, strange.
Please fucking stop.
The feminist civil war has begun.
I love that people have time to make these videos, these composites.
Yeah.
But, you know, I thought that was worth showing you because it's Abbie saying, why is she dehumanizing me? You don't know. This is actually the key thing I took from this video. You don't know me. You don't know my intentions. Why are you dehumanizing me? I'm sorry. Pot, meat, kettle.
Yeah, pot, meat, kettle, exactly. But also, seagulls have at it.
Yeah.
You know, I've made my choice. I'm going to be an eagle. Now, I might end up being an unsuccessful eagle, right? I might not get to the heights that I want to get to, but I'm never going to be a seagull. I will be an eagle, successful or otherwise, but I will never be a seagull.
You can just shave your head and be a bald eagle.
That's right. And this is the choice that you've got. This is the choice that Abbie's got. Now she's chosen for the time being to be a seagull. But at any point in time, any of these people can go
100%.
Well, can pardon the expression. Well, harden the fuck up.
Yeah.
And realize you can waste your life squabbling over the chips with the other seagulls, or you can get on with happy hunting grounds and living in a state of much greater peace.
You sound like a dad talking to me right now, and I appreciate it.
Well,
you will do this.
But I've had to go through these same stages that you're now going through.
Me?
That you're going through.
Oh,
You're watching this as a partial participant.
Yeah.
I'm watching that as a completely detached
Because I
observer.
got skin in the game.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, but you need to get to the point where you realize that you actually should never have had skin in the game. The fact that she came for you actually, and we talked about this on the phone. So for those with who need a bit of context, when Carly was in the middle of that attack and people literally knocking on your door and death threats and worse, you called me, and we ended up on the phone for multiple days in a row, multiple hours a day.
That's how the podcast was born.
Well, yeah, kind of. Back in 2020, when I was trying to talk you off the cliff, and
21, I think it was. Yeah.
You are whenever, and you were saying to me, you know, that like your life is over. You'll never recover from this. You'll never come back from this. And then I want to segue. A little while later, a PR company came along and offered to help you. And they said, we'll do a crisis management PR thing with you. And correct me if I'm wrong, but my recollection from our phone call was that their advice to you was, you'll never have an online presence again. You'll never blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
Now, my opinion is if you're not the one paying, then you're the product.
Yeah.
Right? So someone else said to them, hey, go and make sure Carly never pops her head up again.
Yeah.
Go and put in her head that she's done. She's gone. She'll never come back. She needs to never come back online. They wanted you to believe that because they wanted you to take yourself out of the fight. Now, take yourself off this earth seemed to be the intention of some of, in our opinion, Clem Ford's followers. Yeah. But take yourself out of the fight was certainly the objective of whoever was actually paying for that PR firm. And my advice to you was take a breather for a couple of weeks. And then you just get the fuck right back in there.
Yeah.
And you go elbows out, gloves are off. You want to fight? You've got a fight on your hands.
Do you know what's funny it's not funny, sorry, that's the wrong word. Once you go through something like that, you have to kind of go through it. I think just having that 30,000 foot view for a second, and this doesn't mean about online bullying, it just in general, any of those traumas, I think so few of us will allow ourselves to hit either rock bottom or to truly feel that pain. We try and mask the pain. We try and avoid it.
Yeah.
And we'll try and do anything we can to not sit with that uncomfortable feeling. And I think that's essentially what I did. 5 weeks, I literally didn't leave my house. You know, I did not go outside at all. And something happened in that, call this the birth of my villain era. This is my villain origin story.
Sure.
But one day I woke up and I can't tell you what it was. God, the universe, whoever, all the people talking to me. And I just went, fuck you.
Yeah.
Literally, fuck you.
Yeah.
You don't get to tell me how to live my life.
Yeah.
And it was the most liberating feeling. And, like a phoenix rising to the ashes, whatever. I just went, no, fuck you. Literally fuck you.
So that's the first step.
Yeah.
And well done, because there are many people that never even make that step. There are more steps that you need to make to get to the point where you realize not only fuck them, but actually you go through a phase where you want to get revenge, and you're like, I'll prove to you and I'll show you, and you're going to crash and burn and I'm going to succeed and blah, blah, blah. And then you get to this amazing point where you're like, I don't actually care what happens to you.
Yeah.
I don't need to see you crash and burn. I don't need to see you fail. I'm going to focus on me doing and being the best that I can be, whatever that turns out to be. Maybe I'm going to crash and burn. I don't know. Let's find out.
Yeah.
Let's get on with life and find out.
Do you know what's interesting? Because there was a few people involved in this thing that happened to me. There was also my ex-business partner who most famously said he never heard of me, whilst ASIC documents prove that you owned 50% of the company. But hey, whatever. What do I know?
Sure.
But, go viral. And it's so interesting because I think I told you I bumped into him randomly in Port Melbourne a couple of years ago now. And I was saving a pet bird. Have I told the story on the podcast?
You've told me. I don't think you've told it on the podcast.
Okay, so this ex-business partner, I'm very careful what I say about people. I mean, at the time, we had a legal battle and I won. He was trying to come after me for money that just did not exist. Anyway, and it's interesting because when I started that company, I was so green and you do listen to the wrong people. And I'm happy to admit, fuck me, I'm swearing. I made some bad decisions.
It's a bit of a sweary podcast. But
it's just one of those things. I'm just being myself. Sorry. That's who I am. But, as you do, like in life, you learn things, right? I was young. I was in my 20s, whatever. Anyway, I had never thought of him since that moment. That was I have to think, was it 2015? I think somewhere there. And then I had literally never even thought of him. Yeah. He didn't exist in my mind, not from an anger point of view, just literally it was in the past. And he comes out in 2021 and makes this video about me. I'm like, far out. I have been on your mind that long.
Yeah.
I am living rent-free. I did not realize I impacted you so much. Anyway, fast forward to, I think it might have been 2023 or something. And I was literally walking with a friend in Port Melbourne and I found this I think it was not a canary, what's it starts with C?
It starts with C. Crow.
No, like a bird that you would have as a pet. It doesn't matter. It was a pet bird.
Yeah, okay.
Very much a pet bird.
Yeah.
I was I don't know what it was. Anyway, I keep want to say lorikeet. It wasn't lorikeet. And it'll come to me at the very end of the podcast.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I see it there and I see that it's got a banged up wing. And I was like, oh my God, poor little birdie. So I reached down, grabbed this poor birdie and it's all frightened. Then I realized that this crow's trying to come at it. And maybe this is a metaphor.
Yeah.
This big, mean, bloody crow keeps trying to attack this poor bird. And so I scoop it up. And I was wearing a beanie and I chucked it in the beanie. I was like, oh my God, this is someone's pet very clearly. And it's traumatized. I'm like, Anyway, I'm holding onto the bird and we're trying to fight off the crow. And eventually the little bird gets free and then flies into this tree and it's very obviously injured. Anyway, long story. Sorry, I'm not good at telling short ones. I walked down to the beach and I had no idea that he was behind me and he's walking with a friend and I turn around and sure enough, it's that guy. And I cannot, words from God's mouth into me. I just was like, oh my God, it is so good to see you. I have been meaning to message you and thank you for everything that you did. You gave me so many opportunities. Just last week, I worked with Gordon Ramsay. That would never have happened if you hadn't have done everything. So thank you. It came out a lot better than that. And in the meantime, I'm saving this poor bird and he's just looked at me with I think that man just thinks about me at night and he's just how can I get it next time? Do you remember what's his name? Dr. Claw in Inspector Gadget?
Oh,
next
sure.
time,
Yeah.
Gadget.
Yeah.
That's how I think of him. It's funny, but it's one of those moments where I was the universe presented that. I'm saving this poor little bird. And by the way, it did get its owners back and it was fine.
Oh, there you go.
But he's just, I think he's probably going to come back for round 3.
But this is the thing.
It's funny.
You go from, oh no, they're trying to hurt me, to you're not going to hurt me, I'll live life on my own terms, to I'll get revenge, I'll succeed, or you'll blah, blah, blah.
It was a cockatiel.
To the cockatiel, there you go. to eventually the point of, I'm going to be dead soon.
Yeah. 100%.
I'm gonna give this thing my best shot between now and then. And by the way, they're going to be dead soon.
Yeah.
And it's not a threat. Just, I'm not plotting anything.
As in, generally, you have mortality. Yeah.
Life is short.
Yeah.
And let them live their life, and then they'll face the afterlife and the consequences of their life and their decisions and their relationship with God. I'm going to live mine. I'm going to do everything I can to be the greatest eagle that I can possibly become. Yeah. And I might succeed. I might fail. I don't know. But I sure as hell ain't going to be a seagull.
Well, it's interesting because since, and I'm just talking for me personally, and I hope that, I know there's countless people these women have gone after. I don't know about Abbie so much. I don't pay much of attention to her apart from, again, what pops up in the news cycle. But Clem, I know, has gone after plenty of women.
Savage.
And worse still, Clem's little followers also are the ones on those forums, whether it's Reddit or Tattle Life, whatever. Yeah. They're the ones, who sent me that fucking evil parcel,
But
you know?
this is why I say Clem actually doesn't have influence. She's gathered a group of particularly nasty, spiteful, hateful people that are a very small proportion of the population.
Who do her
and
bidding
she
for
has
her.
very little appeal outside of that.
Yeah.
She's not actually influential.
No. Yeah, she's got a little private army, I guess.
She's got a cabal, a little
Yeah.
harem of sycophants, and that's it.
Yeah.
Outside of that little... and now they can make a lot of noise and they can be
Yeah.
very unpleasant, as you found out the hard way. But actually, you're probably already more influential than her. Not that you reach more people, but actually the people that you reach are actually willing to listen to you and be influenced by you.
That's nice.
In a way that no one's willing to be influenced by you. Either you, everyone already knows who she is.
Yeah.
She's got a little group of followers and sycophants.
And she hasn't been able to grow.
And everyone else rolls their eyes. It's
Yeah.
like the Greens.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone's going to vote Green.
Well, there's a glass ceiling on it, isn't there?
Correct.
There's only so many
Correct.
people that will align with those kind
Correct.
of views. Yeah.
And they've already peaked.
Yeah.
They're already done.
Yeah.
The sky's the limit.
Well, no, this isn't just about me. I mean, I look at this fight between Abbie and Clem, and I look I now always remind myself, if I ever feel like I'm getting back in the mud, you know, I don't want to be in the mud with the pigs. That's similar to the seagull analogy.
yeah.
I always go, have the 30,000 foot view, zoom out.
Correct.
And I guess that's your eagle
Correct.
analogy.
Look at the eagle. Yep.
And so I look at this and I go, okay, both of these people have a large female audience. I would dare say they don't have a huge male following. And if you were those young females or whoever, like I said, Clem's a bit older, surely you witness that and go, that's yuck. That's yuck behaviour, but on both sides. No, I don't think there's any winner in this fight. I think that their behaviour, the way they have to take it online, air all the dirty laundry.
Same as there was no winner in the whole House in Habit.
Yeah, there wasn't.
versus,
And it's still
what's
going.
that?
It just festers.
Why? Why are you fighting over the chips?
Well, what I was going to say is, you're actually going to be having a detrimental impact on your audience because this will put people off.
Yeah.
People go, oh, come on.
Yeah.
And I'm already seeing that. Again, I go and read the comments on, the Daily Mail or, news.com and all that. All those usual suspects have made an article about it.
Yeah.
And then there's 1,000 plus comments. The tabloids,
Yeah.
what you call them, yeah. And then you go read the comments and then people are just they're both as bad as one another. They both deserve it, yada, yada, yada. But what I find really interesting is young women, and I'm speaking about women because we're talking about feminism, right?
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's that many great role models at the moment. Not to say I want to be one. I wouldn't say come after me because I'm very much my own little race. But Abbie has managed to corner that market better than Clem ever did. And she's got a bigger audience and she's got whatever, a little bit more appeal maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I look at that and go, I don't want, and how am I trying? I'm trying to tie this argument together as I'm thinking about it. Those forums I've talked about before, Reddit, Tattle Life, they are emboldened by watching these bitch fights online.
Sure.
Right? The only reason those forums exist is because they see their idols do the same thing and that excuses their behavior. So if you're anonymously logging on to Tattle Life and going, I hate her, she's ugly, blah, 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 it's because that's the example that's been set to you by countless other women.
Yeah.
And I honestly say this, and I know these people watch our podcast, there is so much better things you could do with your time.
Sure.
I don't know why you choose that.
Yeah.
I really don't.
But also keep in mind, in the world, there are about 1 to 2% actual psychopaths, narcissists, etc., in the population. And so when you see an influencer with 12,000, 15,000, whatever, really active followers, or a Daily Mail article with 1,000 comments on it, right? That can be accessed by anyone, anywhere in the world. The 1,000 comments have probably been written by a total of 300 to 400 people because people get into back and forth and that sort of stuff. So probably a couple of hundred people in the world, or let's assume in Australia, have seen fit to argue on both sides. So we've got to halve the number again. There's probably 150 to 200 people that are on, let's say, Clem Ford's side of this and arguing in favour of her. There's going to be people arguing in favour of Abbie Chatfield, and there's going to be people like me but not like me. I wouldn't bother to get into the comments, but people who just a pox on both your houses. All right? So we've got 1,000 comments. Oh no, there's so whoa, this must be such a huge issue. Well, there might be 200 people in there that actually agree with her out of the 12 to 15,000 female narcissists that we already know exist in Australia. Right? So this is my very first revelation in all of this was I was being attacked online for things that I said that I thought were very mild and non-controversial, to be honest. And I had this little revelation. I've shared it with you before, but I'll share it again for the benefit of the podcast. It does not matter what you put online. Someone's going to hate you for
Yes.
it. And my thought experiment was kittens. I could put up the post, I like kittens, online. And if enough people see that post, sooner or later someone comes along and goes, oh, dogs are better. And then someone else comes along having to one-up that one. Right? I've got a better one than that. We shouldn't own pets. We have no right owning animals, blah, blah, blah. Someone's going to come along. Don't you know the cruelty that happened to the mothers when they did it? Okay. So now all of a sudden I've got hate coming at me from people who have decided that I'm the devil because I said I like kittens.
Yeah.
And so the revelation you have to have if you want to have a public life at all is that no matter what you say, someone's going to hate you for it. And so when someone comes at you with hate, it's not a case of the internal reaction can't be, oh no, somebody hates me. You already knew that.
Yeah.
You already knew that. It's a case of, oh, there you are.
Well, also, like, and this is something I'm learning about my master's, just like as a segue. We are genetically predispositioned to be attracted to the negative. That's part of our survival instinct.
Yes.
So that's why when people go, oh, why does it...
Or to notice the negative, yes.
The negative stands out so much because we kind of seek it out.
Yeah.
You know, like we
need to see it. That's where the threats come from.
Yeah.
So our brain is wired to notice those things.
And the best analogy, someone told me this the other day. I can't for the life of me remember who told me this. Like, if you had a piece of paper, a white paper, and you put 3 dots on it, the first thing you notice is the dots. You didn't notice all the white dots, right? And it's so interesting because, you know, there's a level of maturing in this as well, especially for me too, because as this podcast grows and we put stuff out on the internet, there's moments like every now and then I read a comment and go, oh, that was mean. But then the other part of me is like,
You're going to be so famous in the not too distant future that you will be, your brand will be a one-word brand. It'll be Carlz.
Yeah.
Beyonce. I don't have to say Knowles. I just say Beyonce.
Does that
Everyone
mean
knows who I'm talking about.
I'll earn money at some point?
Hopefully, yeah. I keep telling myself any minute now, that'll happen. Yeah.
They're like, you're on the grift. I'm like, where's the grift?
Where's my grifting money, damn it?
Speaking of which, because I'm a bit bored talking about Abbie.
Yeah, we got to move on.
There was more to say, but I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
You guys can talk about it in the comments. And there's actually, to be fair, that video I played, they go really deep into it. So credit to Bearing. Go watch their video.
Yeah.
You know, this is the worst thing. This is why I can't be a journalist, and I don't protest to be. I just not am interested enough to go deep dive into it. I'm like, just to summarize
I'm even less interested. Here's the thing. I know it'll get clicks. I don't know what that Bearing video's had, but I'll guarantee you it's had a lot of views, a lot of engagement.
Yeah, I didn't even look.
I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
I don't care if there's engagement to be had, if there's ad revenue on YouTube to be made.
47,000.
Okay, in how long? Not long.
12 hours.
Yeah, okay. So that's a good video. In Australia, that's a good video. That's performing well. So well done to them.
Yeah.
The views are there. I don't want them. I'm not interested. Thank you very much.
You end up pigeonholing yourself. Like, this is something I think about all the time. Like, you know, I put that reel up last week. I don't want to be known as the ranty girl, even though I am.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But
you're a little bit ranty. Yeah.
I don't want that to be my thing. But as someone who creates content for a living, that gets way more clicks than just me putting up a pretty photo.
Yeah.
It's very annoying.
Yeah.
You know, and interestingly, just to segue over, our YouTube account, so the Oddcast is almost at 600 subscribers. Sorry,
amazing.
Let me.
Thank
pull
you
it
to
up.
everyone that's subscribed and to everyone that hasn't. Even if you're listening to this on the podcast, if you have a YouTube account, could you just duck across to YouTube and click subscribe for us? Help us to get to that 1,000 mark. It'd be great.
Yeah, the thousands. That's the hardest bit. And so, just looking at the two accounts, I've got my Carlz J Soda one, which is photography channel. That's at 620 subscribers.
Nice.
I started from 0.
Yeah,
that's
nice.
pretty cool.
Well done.
And like, I know that's going to be a slower one because there's no outrage on that channel.
There's
me teaching.
There's no clickbait.
Yeah. And the Oddcast, we've already reached our view requirements to get monetized.
Yes,
we just haven't reached the 1,000.
Well done us. Yes.
So yeah, that's very cool. It's very nice. And do you know what? I actually prefer it growing this speed. I don't need the meteoric rise to fame. Like,
you sure?
No, I've had that little taste. I didn't like it.
The 40 million view virality is not your
I
not
don't
your
want
thing.
that ever again.
Well, look, I don't want to steal your thunder, but by the time we're publishing this podcast, my at Topherfield YouTube channel will probably have hit 80,000.
You're gonna get your silver button soon.
I'm going to get my silver, and I plan to buy it. I plan to get it, absolutely.
Oh, you got to buy it.
So you've got to qualify for it by getting the 100,000. But yeah, it comes at a cost. I don't give them out for free. It's
stupid.
But it's kind of like you just cover the cost of the actual thing.
Oh, what does it cost?
A couple $100, I don't know. But yeah, I'll be hitting 80,000 overnight tonight or sometime tomorrow probably.
That's really cool.
And I was at less than 30,000 at the start of this year.
Yeah.
So,
it is actually a really hard thing to do. And, you know, the best thing I've learned about growing anything, and this is just to summarize, you know, the Abbie and Clem thing. You know, it's an easier route to a bigger audience doing the rage bait, for sure.
But it's also a very limited. That glass ceiling exists because of how you started.
Exactly. And then you get known as that and that's it. Like, you know, you can't really I mean, you could pivot, but it would come with some
rebranding.
effort.
Rebranding is way harder than branding.
Yeah. Whereas, you know, my photography channel, I'm happy for it to be a slow burn. You know, I've got a goal for that to reach where I want it to get to in 5 years' time. The Oddcast is doing its thing. And, you know, Topher and I, when we sat down to do this, we didn't have a plan at all. We're just like, let's just
get stuck in.
We have these chats anyway, so let's
that's
film
right.
them.
That's right. Let's just literally point a camera at the conversations we already have.
But speaking of the Oddcast, we have had countless people ask us to make some merch, and that kind of is my specialty.
But yes, I happen to know somebody who's good with that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Yes.
so I would love to make you guys some merch, but like we need a little bit of input. So we could do something simple like, you know, this is my girlfriend's hoodie, Spinal Energetics. We could do like a simple The Oddcast as a hoodie and a t-shirt. That's fine. But I kind of want something like that's ours, like, you know, if you know kind of deal.
Yeah, well, what would that be? I mean, I've got on all my videos I finish with "Stay Free." That's kind of my thing.
But you've got good people break bad laws.
Good people break bad laws.
Very
That's very much my thing. We don't really have a thing.
We haven't had a shtick yet.
Yeah,
and like the more you try and create a shtick.
No, you can't. It's got to be organic.
Weird.
It's got to be organic. So first things first. Your design skills are phenomenal, and that Carlz J Soda logogram. I don't know emblem, whatever it's called.
It's a monogram, yeah.
The monogram. Okay, that's fantastic, and that's a very brandable thing. Could you come up with like a monogram for the Oddcast? Do you think?
I mean, I could.
We could get it like laser cut and lit to replace the lightning bolt. Get an Oddcast.
I'd love a little neon sign. Yeah, that'd be cute.
Yeah,
we have to kind of keep that. I think that's OG.
That is part of the brand.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I don't think we can get rid of that.
Given that the way we came up with the name Oddcast is related to that exact piece.
We'll have that in 20 years' time.
Correct.
It'll go in a museum.
That'll still be there. Yeah. But no, I'd love to. If you could come up with like then that would become the branding. If you know, it doesn't say the Oddcast. You have to know what it is.
There's I came up with a couple of funny things, but my whole thing is like, would you wear that on a t-shirt to the supermarket? So years ago when I started my CrossFit brand, the word CrossFit was trademarked. You couldn't use it.
Yeah, okay.
So you couldn't have it on your clothing anywhere. And I was like, how do I say that you do CrossFit without saying it? And long story short, there was a repetition pattern in workouts that went 21, 15, 9, and that's how I got the name for my company. And it was like, if you know kind of deal. And that's how it developed a cult following, which was really cool. And what happened with that company, I'm still sad about, but it was a learning curve.
Yeah.
But
and it was successful for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like a company that runs for 10 years and then shuts down is still an achievement.
Oh, honestly, we needed big money, like actual money.
Yeah.
Like, it was bootstrapping for most of the time. And then we had like little injections of cash. When I say little, like, 10, 20,000, we needed 100,000 plus injections to actually.
Even that's not a lot of money.
Well, not in the rag trade. And people underestimate the rag trade. You see people do startups all the time and I always get excited for them. But I'm like, to make it successfully as a clothing company is you need money.
Yeah.
And you need volume, because if you don't have the audience, you've got to build the audience, and you do that through ads and influencers and all those activations. Yeah. And if you don't have that, you've got to do it the other way. It's bootstrapping. But in the comments, guys, let us know what you'd like. We'll probably do some hoodies and some t-shirts.
Yeah, hoodies, t-shirts. I reckon like some tank top, singlet top sort of things. Maybe some beer cozies and mugs.
All those things.
All that, yeah.
Look, if you guys let me and I had a budget, I'd make the coolest merch. But we've only got 609 subscribers.
Well, we're going to have to do it as like a print-on-demand thing because we can't afford to get a run of 10,000 garments done or anything like that. So, look, we're going to have to work within the realities of who we are and what we are. But I already do. I mean, I'm wearing. If you'd have told me, I would have worn one of the new ones. This is the old ink that fades. We've now moved to a new ink that'll outlast the garments themselves.
Yeah.
And so we could do something that's like a heat transfer like this. But obviously in one of your designs, it's going to look a lot prettier.
It's so hard because I'm straight away like, no, I want to go. I want to do it from scratch. I'm going to choose the fabric. I'm going to choose the drawstring.
Let's work with. We will get to the point. The Oddcast will get to the point where it is so big that we are doing the kind of volumes where you can do all of that.
Do you know what?
But not yet.
I really miss creating like that. I loved it. I'd go to China. I'd go and just pick up all the different fabric swatches and just come back and just sit there and just be like, let my imagination run wild?
So I went to Guangzhou when I was trying to get the go-kart business started. That was killed by COVID. That's kind of my equivalent story to you losing the clothing business that you had. We had $5.5 million investment ready to go. We had planning approvals. We had all the engineers' drawings. We had the whole thing quoted out, and then COVID progressively fucked us over a couple of years, and eventually we all just had to walk away. But as part of that, I was developing the clothing and the apparel that was going to go with the brand. It was beautiful. And I wanted every piece of clothing to have function as well as form. So they all had to have technical elements that spoke to their purpose as a driver's garment. From the soft shell jackets that we had, through to the way the gloves worked, the particular shoes that we had, everything had features that was like, that's because it's for drivers, right? And so I was over there in Guangzhou, and I'm looking at all the samples and all the nonsense, and there's all the rubbish manufacturers.
Yeah.
This is a huge trade fair. There's all the rubbish manufacturers, but then there's
Did you
also
go to Canton?
Went to Guangzhou.
the
Canton
market,
Canton.
is it?
It's like that huge. It's
It's
incredible.
huge. Is it Canton? Have I said that right?
Canton, I think. Yeah. Anyway, it's. I went to that, and I'm still getting emails from. Are you coming this year? I mean, yeah, Mr. Field, we would like to see you.
Do you know what? Like, I'm going to go on to the climate thing in a second, just as a segue, but or as a tangent time. When we talk about sustainability here in Australia, I think Australians need to go take a trip to China and just see the scale.
Yep. And realise that most of what we think we've done to save the environment and reduce emissions has actually been to export them to China. The reason why China is as big of an emitter as it is because they're doing all our manufacturing for us.
Yeah.
Because we stopped. We didn't stop the emissions, we offshored them. Anyway, I'm walking through this building, looking at these shoes and everything, and in amongst them you find the good manufacturers. And there are some,
there's some exceptional ones.
The top shelf shoes that we're paying hundreds of dollars a pair for, sneakers over here, are coming out of factories next door to the ones that are making the absolute rubbish, right? They're all coming from the same place. And you go through and you realize that these shoes that are absolutely top shelf materials, top shelf glues, really nice designs, etc., $9 a pair. And we're paying 250, 300 Australian.
A lot of it is also volume, though. Like whenever I went over there, what people don't people maybe underestimate or maybe just unaware. There's like dedicated towns to sections of clothing. So, for example, this is the denim district.
Correct.
This is the activewear district.
Yep.
And I started activewear before it became like kind of as big as it is now.
Yeah.
And there's way bigger suppliers now. But there a lot of those places like, they'll be like, oh, we make for Lululemon. Or you go in there and they're not allowed to say
they
that.
Don't say who they,
but you find the discarded thing and with the cuts through it. You're like, oh, this is Lulu. Actually,
so I have a story about that. I'm walking through the Canton Fair. We're there for 4 days. I'm in day 3 or something. My brain is dead. My head is spinning. And I'm walking through now the jacket area. And I'm wearing a jacket that I got. It's a Kirkland brand jacket that I got from Costco. Is it the do Kirkland?
I have no idea.
Anyway, one of those like budget volume kind of things. And I'm wearing this soft shell jacket. And I see my jacket hanging as a sample. And I walk over, and it doesn't have the Kirkland logos on it, but I look at every single detail is identical.
Yeah.
These are the guys that make this jacket.
Yeah.
And I'd paid about $55 Australian, which was pretty jolly cheap.
Yeah.
For it. It was a decent garment. I liked it. It was a good jacket. And I think in the sorts of volumes, once you got above 10,000 units, we were talking like $7-8 for that.
There's so many variables there, but I mean, we're getting sidetracked, but I love garment production. It's very difficult to make a crust out of it. Yeah. Really difficult.
Oh, well, I mean, I went shopping for some stuff for one of my daughters the other day, and I'm picking up, these little ribbed knitted tights and matching, ribbed knitted sort of semi-thermal long sleeve t-shirt kind of setup, $3 each off the shelf. I'm like, how do you manufacture the thread for $3, let alone dye it, knit it, package it, ship it, put it on the shelf? How the hell is anyone making money at $3 for a garment?
What scares me though is we have all these. This is where I guess if you don't know, you don't know. So like when I hear all these young girls talking about sustainability and green energy and all this sort of stuff, I'm like, I understand and I appreciate your pursuit of that. But when you go and see it on the scale like it is, and that's just China, India and Bangladesh are worse.
Another scale again, yeah.
At least China, there is somewhat of like a commercialization with it. India and I think there's manufacturing in Pakistan too,
there's
but
particularly leathers and stuff out
nothing.
Of Pakistan, yeah.
There is no precautions. It is proper slave labor, and when you go into Shenzhen, right, you go past there's the factories that they want you to see.
Yeah.
And then there's the factories that they deliberately don't let you see. And I had a really good relationship with my supplier, and he'd take me places. And I actually planned to do a documentary about it, but in the end, it was just too big a project, and it was quite depressing.
Oh, yeah. I just got my bottle of water to change cameras.
How have you gone through that already?
See, this is the thing. This is why I celebrated so much when I managed to not have finished my glass of water by the end of a podcast. I am a fish. I need water.
It's not. Okay, sure. Should we probably just get back on track with what we're talking about?
Look, so rag trade expensive. We want to do merch. Tell us in the comments what merch we should do.
Imagine if we did a podcast where we just literally were like, blah, 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 bye.
No, because people would be like, who are you and what have you done with Carlz and Topher? Where are you holding them? They're obviously hostages somewhere, and they've thrown AI in their place.
Our long-winded chats and what people tune in for.
And listen, anyone that is feeling like complaining about how long-winded and circuitous conversation is, we just told you how this podcast started. We love having great conversations, and this is exactly the kind of conversations we have, and we just decided to point a camera at it.
Yeah.
We are letting you in on our private conversations. You're welcome. If you don't like it, F off.
Do you know what? It's actually, G said this to me last night. We're watching Abbie, Joel.
Oh, yes.
Jamal.
Yes.
I've got his name right now, Joel, and Ruksham, and they were doing their podcast. And I was like, and G was like, we need more of this.
Yeah.
We need more people just having these conversations, which often happen behind closed doors, or maybe you don't feel confident enough.
Yep.
That's how you change things.
Yeah.
That's literally how you change things. So for anyone who's wondering why we do it the way we do, just 'cause it's organic.
And it's also
Unplanned.
So I hope you didn't read the comments. I put up a segment of the video, and someone jumped in there and said, Topher, you're damaging your reputation by doing a podcast
Oh no, I got
with that
back in.
lightweight.
Yeah.
Did you? You
I got
replied?
into that.
Bottom line, I podcast with Carly because I like Carly. And we've got history in the sense that they came for Carly and tried to kill her, and they failed, and I respect that. And I like having chats with you, and I like hanging out with you, and I think it's fun and it's interesting. So no, I'm not going to swap podcasting with you for a heavyweight because that's not what I want to do.
I actually want to bring that comment up.
Sure.
It's a good one. I think it was on the Greens one, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
Yeah, because it was last week. Let's have a look. It was particularly nasty.
Yeah. I mean, it's the sort of stuff that it just bounces off me. But, it's just kind of like, if you don't like it, don't watch. Your choice is watch or don't watch. Don't try and tell me what's going to be good or bad for my reputation, random no-name account on the internet. Like, if I cared about the opinions of random no-name accounts on the internet, I would never have got to where I am.
Yeah. What I find interesting, though, is, this goes for all of you guys. If you want these kind of platforms to exist, you need to let them happen in a way that's organic and it unfolds. You can't be like, okay, you need to do this, but do it this way. This is how I need it to be.
Bottom line, if we stop having fun, we will stop doing it.
Well, yeah, it just becomes boring.
If it becomes boring for us, if this starts to feel like work instead of fun, we will not continue.
Yeah.
It's that simple. We do this because we like it. It's fun. If you don't want to watch, don't watch.
I'll find the comment later. I don't want to waste everyone's time. But
I do think we promised everyone we were going to get back to our notes, and we still
here we go. I found it. On that
perfect timing. Perfect timing.
Warps Mac or whatever. Topher, you really need to distance yourself from this lightweight, inane Carlz. She may be giving you exposure through her socials, but this comes at a great cost to your own credibility. I hope you can see this and not become inured to these types of perceptions of association.
Which is hilarious to me because except on Instagram, I believe I absolutely thump you in terms of social following. So the idea that I'm like using you for the exposure is laughable.
I'm using you.
But also, like, I do this because I like it.
Well,
and
imagine that. Imagine doing something purely because you enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean,
without
crazy,
like some underlying
right?
intentions.
And this idea that I hope you don't become inured to these perceptions. What, your perceptions, Mr. Warped? Like you've already told me your perceptions are warped in your username.
Well, your comment was nice. I wouldn't be here if I cared about perceptions of strangers on the internet. Also, FYI, I have a way bigger following online than Carly. I podcast with her because it's fun. If you don't like it, F off.
Yeah, and
so
that is literally my opinion.
My response was, what's truly inane is your comment. Topher and I have been working together since 2021, from Frontline Resistance to Lockdowns, Battleground Melbourne. I helped produce it.
Yep.
And I design his merch, his books, and the whole lot. So spare me the condescending tone. Your problem isn't the podcast. It's that a woman who doesn't kiss your intellectual ring dares to speak. You want Topher in a tower
How dare
surrounded
you
by
speak.
sycophants? so you can feel clever for understanding the big words. God forbid he has a real conversation with someone who challenges the format and makes it accessible. If this show offends your delicate sensibilities so deeply, why are you still watching? Hate watching is a full-time job, hey? You could always reclaim your time and go do something productive, or is a bit of trolling all you got. I'm much better in the written word.
Oh, lean into it.
Yeah.
Lean into it. So yeah, anyway, we do it because it's fun. And what's also fun is getting back to our notes.
All right, so I don't want to talk about bloody Liberal Party for a second.
Listen, we have to. It's
Can we go international for a bit?
All right, let's
then we'll
do
come
it.
back. All right, let's talk quickly about the drug scandal.
Okay, so this is hilarious to me. We've talked before about the fact that I don't jump on. Excuse me, that's the bubbles. The bubbles are coming back. It's sparkling water. I don't do breaking news. I don't jump on. Pardon me.
He needs to burp. I told you this is going to happen. Do that or the other end.
Sparkling water might have been a bad idea, but it was funny. I got my little comic moment, so that was what I really wanted the sparkling water for. I don't jump on breaking news because if everyone else is already talking about it, what value am I bringing, right? It wasn't until I saw the media try and run the cover up that I was like, okay, now this is a story that I'm actually interested in. And so I did a very sarcastic, tongue-in-cheek video talking about the fact that Macron, Starmer and Merz, the newly appointed German chancellor, were caught on camera on a train out of Kiev, taking a train, by the way, because the skies aren't particularly safe, obviously. So people are like, oh, why were they on a train? Must have been a setup, blah, blah. No, they're on a train because you don't want to be flying a commercial airliner that close to a war zone where planes are getting shot down. Like that's generally considered to be bad for your health. So they had a meeting in a boardroom on the train and they then let the press in. And we see them, the press have already got the cameras set up, blah, 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 and they're coming back through and they realize that on the table where they've had their meeting, there is, and it is a tissue. It is a tissue. We'll get to that in a second. And a drink stirrer I'm now, for those that are listening, I'm now doing bunny ears with my fingers because that was not a drink stirrer. The tissue, so this is, don't ask me why I know this, but junkies will put their baggie of powder inside a tissue or a serviette or a fabric or paper that they can wrap around it because it doesn't slide around in their pocket as much and it's less likely to fall out. And if it does get seen, it's not as conspicuous.
This is really niche knowledge.
Yeah. Don't ask me why I know. So they've put that on the table. Yeah. They've scooped out the nose beers and used this supposed drink stirrer, which is a very lopsided, like a little one-sided thing on the end. It does not look like a drink stirrer at all. It is a nose beers spoon. And so they sit down and they're giggling away like schoolgirls. They are way too happy.
And their eyes are literally pinging out of their heads.
It's so funny. But the claim that it was a tissue and a drink stirrer might have had more credibility were it not for their efforts to make them disappear.
I know.
It is so awkward.
It was so funny because there's two angles of it. There's there's multiple angles.
Yeah, multiple angles, yeah.
And the German chancellor, he sits down and he moves his folder and obviously the stir is there.
I'm going to use your pen as an example for those that are watching. For those that haven't seen the video, what he does is sitting on the table and he grabs it with both hands and he holds it like this. So he's literally covering the entire object. Now, who sits at a table with a dirty used drink stirrer, or a clean one for that matter, and decides, I don't want that in the cameras. I don't want that in the shot. I'm going to clean up the table by holding it, by strangling it with both of my hands so that no one can see any part of it.
I will grab this piece of paper.
What a ridiculous thing.
And then, so we sit there, I'll move my iPad so you guys can see, and in front of Macron, who's, dating a trans man,
allegedly.
You guys can't really see, is like a tissue like that. And
ta-da!
Macron, you literally see him reach over like this, and he's like, and then he puts it under his arm like this. And then no one's paying
off
attention.
The edge of the table, yeah.
And he goes, whoop, into the back pocket.
And so watch my video on this on my @Topherfield YouTube channel. The idiot grin that he gets on his face as he does the transfer from one hand to the other to put it in his pocket. He looks across at Keir Starmer, who of the three of them is the one who may have been less aware. He was either unaware of the problem or maybe he wasn't actually on the gear. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But he wasn't aware of what was going on behind him, and Macron is moving this bag. And again, if you've decided for aesthetic reasons to remove a serviette off the table, you grab the serviette, put it to one side, or throw it in the corner. Or,
you're not trying to be like all.
He's not trying to make sure no one sees it whilst he moves it from one hand to the other, and he's sure not doing a schoolboy idiot grin. You got away with that one. I'm pretty sure that was smooth. I saw it. So someone, again, people use these things for clicks on the internet. Someone put up a post on X saying this was obviously a serviette and a drink stirrer. Could all the right-wing conspiracy nut jobs please stop saying otherwise? And they put up a little clip of the video of just that critical sort of moment. And then at the end of the video, they put up a movie poster, and I didn't pay enough attention to the movie poster. It was like a magician's, like the Prestige or whatever, like a magician's movie poster, and they'd AI'd the faces of Mers and so forth in. So the post was obviously satirical, but it was straight until that poster came up. And you thought that's what he was really saying until that poster came up. The engagement on that post was unbelievable. Yeah. People arguing back and forth.
What I love about moments like this is just like the memosphere runs with it.
Yeah.
Like I've seen so many good X things about it. It was so funny. But look, the whole cocaine thing, the really sinister part of this is that there's people who are jailed for their lives over these illicit drugs.
Yep.
And then the leaders are literally partaking.
But what I like is that now we know why they never investigated whose cocaine was found at the White House. You remember that cocaine that was found at the White House?
Joey's.
Well, there's no way of knowing. If they're all taking it.
To be fair, it could have been any of them.
Correct. If they're all taking it, honestly, you're never going to figure out which one actually lost their cocaine. They're not going to own up to it, so you might as well not try. It's nuts to think that, they're throwing people in prison. They're spending a fortune on border security for the war on drugs. And yet...
So
clearly,
how do they get it? Like, I mean, I'm sure there's ways of getting it, but as in when there's a drug bust, the cops take it, then some of it goes missing.
So I happen to be friends with someone who did hard jail time, who tells me about their time supplying substances to a number of people, including, by the way, a much younger Daniel Andrews, allegedly. Again, this is hearsay. This is what he says to me, but he has done hard time, and. They bring it in the same way that all the other criminals do, but it just comes down to them. They've got the connections into those markets where they can make more money, so they supply those people. Although Daniel Andrews was allegedly a notorious non-payer, you couldn't let him have anything on credit.
That's a risky game to play. I am so innocent in this sense. I have never done those kind of drugs. I don't know anything about it. But
for the record, I've never done them either.
No, but I just think it's funny because in my head, maybe I've watched far too many movies. Like, I don't want to owe a debt to a drug dealer. I feel like that doesn't end well for me.
Not a good idea. Look, there's a lot of dirty stuff that goes on, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on before it escalates up to people physically hurting each other. But that's not a world you want to get mixed up in. You don't want to owe someone money.
I'm just a little bit like, I don't want to tempt fate with that.
But yes, there is no question world leaders are able to get this stuff. The rich and famous always have been, always will be. It's one of the reasons why the war on drugs, in my opinion, needs to be abandoned. Not because I want to see drugs everywhere and 5-year-olds taking drugs and they're going to know, of course I don't want to see that. But let's acknowledge that the war on drugs is failing. We can't keep it out of our prisons, and apparently we can't keep it out of our houses of Parliament either.
You've just brought something to my attention, which, again, this is tangent number 2 of the podcast.
Tangent time.
That's become the song, even though I hate it. Because we haven't got a better
I literally made up a tuneless song with zero creativity, and it's now become the catchiest song of the show.
That's it. So this was a comment, I think, from a week ago or so, and I wanted to bring it up and then I forgot about it. A guy, I can't remember what I was talking about, but in the comments someone said that's literally goes against all... that's when I was doing the ranty putting to camera thing, and I was like, if you didn't volunteer in the election, you have no right to sit there and whinge about it. And this guy's written, this defies everything about libertarianism, and you call yourself a libertarian. And I was like, this is the problem when you are so ideologically blind. You're like, this is the ideology and I adhere to it 100%. There's no room for nuance. I was like, this is a very difficult way to live your life if you...
But also he's wrong, because libertarianism does not mean I can't tell you what I think. Or what would be a good strategy or what we should do. It's, I am not going to support making laws to force you or to punish you one way or the other. But absolutely, if someone says to me, do you think I should start an ice habit? Yeah, maybe. I've been thinking about trying fentanyl. What do you think? Terrible idea, you idiot. What are you thinking, right? Yeah. Should there be a law? No.
Yeah.
right? That's the difference.
Yeah, okay.
We're allowed to express our opinion. You're allowed to get shouty and pointy at the camera, and then anyone that doesn't like being shouted and pointed at is allowed to go and watch something different.
Yeah.
Like that's the freedom of choice and association that we have. So if you'd said there should be a law requiring you to stand on a polling booth and hand out how to vote cards, well, at that point, that's not a libertarian position. To say you should voluntarily get off your ass and help these people because our future depends on it is a perfectly libertarian
Or
position.
just stop whinging at least.
Yeah, it was just at least stop whinging about the outcome if you didn't help to influence it.
I have a question around libertarians are anti the war on drugs. I get that.
Yep.
They also are pro the legalization of marijuana.
Yep.
How do you feel about that?
Fine. I'm pro the legalization of basically everything.
The reason it's not that I'm anti marijuana. I'm anti letting people have free reign to smoke it wherever they want. And so I was having this chat with G the other day because I was like, I don't want marijuana legalized. I've been to San Francisco where it is legal, and I hate the smell of it, and I hate that I can smell it everywhere. Like I'm walking to a cafe, oh, there's marijuana. I'm walking here, marijuana. I hate it. And if you legalize it, then it becomes a free-for-all. And then it was like, oh, well, you could just make laws like you can't smoke in restaurants and stuff. I'm like, oh, so it still needs to be legalized then. Do you know what I mean?
So this is where private property rights come in. So I'm of the opinion that if a private property owner, such as a restaurant or a cafe or a pub or a casino or what have you, wants to allow smoking in their venue, then they should absolutely be allowed to do that. Cigarette smoking, cigar smoking, vaping, and yes, marijuana, etc. But then patrons are then free to make their own decisions.
Yeah.
And so what you'll end up with is some venues will say, hey, we're going to have smoking in our entire venue because we think that's what's going to be best for our business, or just that's what we want to do, regardless of whether it's best for our business. Others are going to go 50-50. We'll allow smoking over there for those that want it, but over here is going to be smoke-free. And then others are going to be like, no, we're staying smoke-free. Like that's, we couldn't create a family-friendly environment.
That was a thing in restaurants, like that's the smoking section.
Well, and it's a bit ridiculous when it's like in the same room.
That's what I mean. I was like,
those are the tables. Okay, but we've got to the point now where in New South Wales, you can either have a cigarette at a cafe table and no food. They're not allowed to bring food to you, or you can eat.
I didn't know that.
Right? They can't bring food to you if you're smoking if you're in the smokers area at a table. You can go in and get food and take it out with you to smoke, but they can't serve food there. Like it's so petty, so ridiculous. Correct. In my opinion, these are individual private property owners' rights. And when the government steps in and says, we will decide yet again what people are or are not allowed to do on your private property, what they're actually doing is taking away private property rights from the owners to decide what is and is not allowed. So I agree. I don't like the smell of marijuana either. And, do I want to be walking through Chadstone Shopping Centre and have someone walking past me, blowing chuff in my face? No, I don't. But also I would expect that a place like Chadstone Shopping Centre, even if marijuana were legal, would say you're not going to smoke marijuana indoors or potentially not even anywhere on our private property. Thank you very much. And they have the right to do that because it's private property.
Yeah. The issue is when you're walking around, like I haven't been to New York since it was legalized, but I remember walking around parts of California and just being like, oh, yuck. But that's just my opinion. That's
just your opinion, man.
This is my opinion.
Yeah.
But the reason I brought that up is like, yes, I am libertarian in most ways, but it doesn't mean like I will die on that hill and I can't have like my own personal
your own personal
opinions.
preference. Being a libertarian and not wanting to use the force of law and government violence to make people do things doesn't stop you from having your own opinions. You're allowed to have your own opinions.
Yes, I just thought it was interesting for that person, whoever wrote that comment. Moving on to our next topic, Keir Starmer has done an immigration U-turn, which I find this really interesting because we talked about Reform UK's popularity and Nigel Farage has been able to recruit a lot of people over from the Tories. And so this was actually like quite jarring because Starmer's like been accused of having coke, and then in the next breath I just caught this clip of him and he was talking about how these migrants or immigrants need to be able to be English proficient. I was like, is he allowed to say that? I didn't think the left were allowed to say that.
So this is really interesting because it actually speaks to a thesis that I'm actually writing a chapter on. There's a book coming out soon about what do we do from here? What does the sort of the freedom-loving centre-right libertarian Australian movement do? Do we support the Liberal Party to try and reform them or do we support an alternative to try and replace them? My argument is that we need to support an alternative in order to reform them. Once there's an alternative on their flank, they will have to find their values again or they will be replaced, and either way is a win. And we're watching exactly that play out with the Tories in the UK, because of Reform's success, all of a sudden they're finding their roots again. They're finding their values. Now, I happen to be pro-immigration, but at the moment our incentives are completely perverse.
Yeah.
The idea that people can come in, mooch off the welfare system, enjoy all of the benefits without actually, working and paying in, etc., is completely perverse. So we need to get rid of the perverse incentives, and then immigration will work without restrictions. But right now, because we're allowing all of these perverse incentives, we have to, unfortunately, impose restrictions. Otherwise, people come in and bankrupt us by mooching off our goodwill. So to see the Tories finally recognising that problem, well, yeah, it's only happening because they're being outflanked.
It's really hard too, because I see all sorts of stuff on X, and I just don't have the time to go deep dive on every topic that I see. But there's obviously migrants coming across, all refugees they're calling them, from South Africa into the US. The white South Africans, and I saw all these photos of Johannesburg before and after, and you kind of look what's happening, and you see what's happening in the UK, and I'm trying to dance around this because I don't want to be told a certain thing.
We're going to get censored.
Correct.
Yeah.
But you see that decay, and it infuriates me because it doesn't need to be like this. I am pro people coming here for a better life, absolutely. But that means you have to leave behind your old ways. And I'm not saying you have to leave behind your culture. But you need
got to leave
adopt
behind
ours.
your hatreds.
Yeah.
And you better come over here to work. See, that's what the Italians, the Greeks, and the Chinese and the Vietnamese all did.
Yep.
Right? That's why they've now been assimilated and accepted into our culture, is because actually, they worked their asses off and they earned their right to be here. Can I come back to the South Africa thing? Before South Africa went down the tube, we had Rhodesia, which went down the tube in the form of Zimbabwe under Mugabe. So they had a civil war, they renamed, Mugabe got into power. And he expropriated the land from white farmers, and all the same arguments that we're seeing play out under Zuma and so forth in South Africa. We know exactly where this leads, because this is precisely what Robert Mugabe did in Zimbabwe. It results in starvation. So Zimbabwe was the breadbasket of Africa. In terms of wheat growing and grain growing, they were it in Africa. They were the number one most fertile place. Everything went belly up because it was the landowners that actually understood what needed to be done.
Yeah.
Right? You can't just stick a different person onto the same land and you're going to get the same results. I mean, imagine sticking me on a farm up in the Murray-Darling Basin. Yeah, okay, I know more about the Murray-Darling Basin than most city people do.
Yeah.
I now live within the basin. Doesn't mean I know jack about what to do with
100%.
the land. You stick me on a farm out there, you ain't getting shit.
Yeah, 100%.
We're all going to die. And it's the same as what's happening in South Africa. Now, what's really telling and what's really dangerous, this is a dangerous moment for the left on the immigration issue, is what's happening with these press conferences that Trump is doing and others are doing in America with these white South African farmers, is they're coming out of the plane, or they're coming out into the press conference, and it's families.
Yeah.
It's men, but it's also women, and it's their children.
Yeah.
And then you contrast that with the migrant caravans coming up from South America. You contrast that with the boats coming into Australia. You contrast that with the men in Paris and going through the tunnel into the UK. These are fighting age men. Mm-hmm. They don't have wives and they don't have children, at least not with them. And the argument, the bleeding heart argument, is, but it's too dangerous of a journey. They couldn't have brought them with them. Well, in the case of Australia, these people generally flew into Indonesia. Yeah. Right? The only dangerous bit, and they had a passport up until then, by the way, and then magically that got lost. And the only dangerous bit was that last little bit that they took on a people smuggling boat, because our bleeding hearts would let them in if only they took that dangerous journey that had about a 2% risk of death across to Christmas Island on a boat. So actually, they could have got the whole family to Indonesia, but they didn't. What's different there? And that's a question that is going to be toxic.
Well, interestingly, I've saved a bunch of tweets now. What do you call them on X now? Posts. I've saved some X posts.
I look, Elon's done a lot of good stuff. Renaming Twitter to X is not one of them.
It's just annoying.
Twitter and Twitter. Tweets, it was perfect.
Yeah.
The world was a beautiful place.
Yeah, I can't Twitter myself. Anyway, so this is from an account called End Wokeness. They've written, South Africa has effed around and we'll find out. White farmers currently produce 95.3% of their corn, 98.7% of their wheat, 97.6% of their cotton, 97.2% of their citrus, 99% of their potatoes, 91.4% of their tomatoes, 96.9% of their soybean, 95.8% of their poultry, 66% of their cattle, and 89% of their wool. And currently they're the ones who are having their land taken from them. And I'm not too sure who the guy is. You might know who he is. The guy who's saying that we're not calling for the slaughter of whites yet.
Yeah.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
Zuma. Well, the president Zuma has "Kill the Boer" is a song that they sing at their political rallies and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So they're in power.
Yes.
Sorry, I haven't paid enough attention to this.
And they have been for some time, and it's been gradually getting worse.
And he was interviewed yesterday or the day before, basically saying like, we haven't called for the slaughter yet. I can't promise anything in the future.
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, this is a global leader saying that. That is
correct.
If ever there's a red flag, that's the one.
We'll get around to the genocide later. So the retort to those numbers you just read out is, well, of course they produce most of the food. They own most of the land, and that's because they stole it off the Zulu and the native tribes that they invaded. And this is where it gets really messy because, and it relates to Australia. There was an invasion. There was a war. The Dutch won. That's where the Boers come from. They're Dutch. The Dutch won, and South Africa became a Dutch colony, and then later in its life became an English colony through the Second World War, etc. That's the history of how we got to that point in time. Now, you could argue, well, what's happening then is they've just started the war again. They're basically re-invading their own land, and you could justify it on that basis. Okay, if you want to be honest, that's the honest way to actually look at what's happening. They are waging war against white people. There is a race-based war going on in South Africa right now where they are taking back the land that they view as having been taken off them in a previous invasion by the Dutch. And then obviously the English taking control later. That at least is a intellectually consistent way of looking. I'm not saying it's morally right, but it's an intellectually consistent way of looking at it. What they're actually saying, though, is not that. What they're saying is essentially you got the land unjustly, even though it might have been now in their family for 3, 4, 5 generations. We're going to take it off you. If we let you live, you're lucky. They're now talking about going to a genocide level, but they're doing it all under the color of law. They're not actually admitting, hey, this is open season now. This is a war. They're saying, oh no, this is all. We're just doing this legally through reparations and through these sorts of things. Well, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. Admit that it's a war. Admit that it's open bloodshed.
Yeah. Well, interestingly, as I said, I check the comments for the temperature, and that tweet I just mentioned, I'm reading the comments now, and there's a lot of people going, yeah, the blacks will do it better. They took the land exactly as you said, and then there's a whole bunch of inane comments. But I thought this one was interesting. Just to follow up what you were saying, Zimbabwe kicked out white farmers and immediately fell into poverty. In the early 2000s, Zimbabwe's former dictator Robert Mugabe gave the green light to his paramilitary supporters to invade commercial farms, seizing around 23 million acres of land. The property rights of commercial farmers were revoked, and these states resettled the confiscated farms with small-scale agriculturalists. The results of Mugabe's harebrained populism were only too predictable. Most of the new would-be farmers had no real knowledge of commercial agriculture, and many soon returned to their subsistence farming. With much of the country's arable land now uncultivated, agricultural production quickly dwindled. The actual commercial farmers left for other African countries such as Zambia, Nigeria, and Ghana, taking with them their intricate knowledge of farming practices. The result was devastating food shortages in a nation once dubbed the breadbasket of Africa. Total food production fell a staggering 60% in the space of 10 years, while commercial farmland lost an estimate 3/4 of its aggregate value between 2000 and 2001. That 1 year loss exceeded $5.3 billion, all the foreign aid given by the World Bank to Zimbabwe since independence in 1980.
Yep.
Yeah, it's...
I mean, this is deep into fuck around, find out territory. Like this is simply socialist, actually communist practices with that intersectionalist overlay of the racism that gets added on top in the modern context.
That's I think this is why I'm getting so frustrated. Like it's this is exactly like you said. It's just communism rebranded, but now you've got to it that incredibly insidious racism context around it. So now it's like
it's intersectionalism, and pretty soon it won't be good enough if you're black. You have to now be a transgender.
Parts of Africa, they're still arguing over the tribes. Like, isn't it in Rwanda? We just had a genocide over
the Hutus and the Tutsis in Rwanda. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like it just keeps. It's not about race.
But that's not the only part of the world where that's happening. But what I'm kind of grateful. I mean, it's a horrific humanitarian disaster in the making. But places like Venezuela, Argentina, Zimbabwe, South Africa, they provide the world with object lessons.
Yeah.
And I view it as my kind of role, so to speak, is to shine a spotlight on that and say, hey, guys, this is why I talk about Venezuela and Argentina as much as I do. Because it's like, hey, guys, these are the object lesson of our generation, and we need to learn that lesson or we will repeat their mistakes. And unfortunately, we've chosen to repeat their mistakes, at least at this point in time.
And I hate being the bearer of bad news, but I think it's inevitable because, as I said, when you check the comment threads, like these young ones, they want it.
Yep.
They want to see that revolution. They want to be part of it. And in their mind, it makes sense because it goes against everything that seems real now. They're they're anti-capitalism. They're anti the establishment. They're anti everything that has come before them. And they want to see what happens when they apply their ideas, and they won't be satisfied until that happens.
This is the danger of a logical fallacy known as a false binary. So it gets set up in their minds as there's capitalism and there's communism. Right? Those are the two. You have to choose between those two. And we're capitalist right now. Not true, by the way, but that's what they get told. We're capitalist, and capitalism is failing. And if you accept all of those premises, well, obviously communism is the answer. Now, of course, that's a false binary to start with, and it's not even true that what we have is capitalism. What we have is corporatism, which is akin to socialism. It's a form of corporatized socialism, which is the blood brother of communism. We don't have capitalism at all, and people love to say, market failure, this and that, every single time. We need to regulate the banks. Look at this market failure. I'm like, banking is one of the most regulated industries on earth. Oh, the supermarkets are price gouging. We need regulations so that because capitalism has failed. Food production and processing and transport is one of the most is a massively regulated industry already. Everywhere, every time they try and say, oh, capitalism has failed, the thing they're pointing to is one of the most regulated markets out there. No one's pointing at smartphones and going, oh, capitalism has failed. Look at the failure of smartphones. Well, guess what? Tech is one of the least regulated industries. Software is one of the least regulated industries. It's not a coincidence that in technology, hardware and software, we see the fastest rate of progress and the greatest innovation going on because the government's not in the way. Yeah. And so the false binary of, there's capitalism or there's, there's capitalism or there's communism. Capitalism has failed, therefore communism. That's literally as deep as it goes in the minds of a lot of these young people.
Just on that, I'm just going to write down this timestamp because I'm trying to be diligent as I do this. I need to show you this photo of Macron that I saved.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, he's having a great time.
Tell me that's not drugs.
He's having a great time.
But back to what we were talking about Keir Starmer, because I've
That's right. Immigration. We got to South Africa via immigration. Yes.
Yeah, and I save all these things, and I'm trying to be diligent over here. Okay, so these are his comments, right? So UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer calls for the UK to take back its borders, says that the UK is becoming an island of strangers. Interesting choice of words. And immigrants should learn how to speak English. Wow. And this is his quote, verbatim. Without strict rules, we risk becoming an island of strangers, not a nation that walks forward together. So when you have an immigration system that seems almost designed to permit abuse, then you're not championing growth, you're not championing justice, or however else you defend the status quo. You're actually contributing to the forces that are slowly pulling our country apart. So yes, I believe in this. I believe we need to reduce immigration significantly. I cannot believe that came out of that man's mouth.
Unbelievable.
I am just, what? We are living in a parallel universe right now.
So I'm just trying to find where I was in London when I stayed there for the ARC conference. When we were there for ARC, I also then headed across and I spent some time. It wasn't in Westminster itself, but it was literally a 2.5 minute walk from the parks around Buckingham Palace. So right in the centre of, like Mayfair, somewhere in there. I can't remember exactly. And we were staying near a little commercial district with shops, etc. There were shops there, mobile phone shops, and there was a grocery store, etc., where not a single sign anywhere on the front, the name of the shop, nothing was in English. Yeah. Not a single thing. So I've got no issue with foreigners coming in, starting businesses, running businesses. In fact, I'd much rather see them running businesses, right? Yeah. But clearly what's happening here is they're running a business for the purpose of providing what other immigrants want. Again, I've got no problem with that. But they're doing it to the exclusion of, to the I don't care about the people that were already there before they got there.
I'm going to say something quite controversial.
No, not you.
And I hope it doesn't come out with malice because this is not how I intend it.
Malice.
England has so much historical like significance.
Yeah.
Not just for white people, as in like it has got a millennia of architecture, of art, of just human, like, what's the word I'm looking for? It's so well documented, right? If we let people come in who do not value that, are we going to see these incredible pieces of architecture just get treated terribly? Are we going to see things knocked down? Are we going to see history erased?
Was it, what cathedral was it in France that got burned a couple of years ago?
Notre Dame.
All I'll say is this. If it is good and right for Africans to protect African culture, even when they travel around the world, then surely it's right for the English to protect English culture at home where that culture grew.
I'll give you an example, and I'm not saying it's the same thing because it's not, but in Afghanistan, I'm pretty sure it was Afghanistan, there were these Buddhist statues that ISIS blew up.
Yep.
They had been there for millennia. They were very significant. They were there from people who they were
carved into the side of a mountain, if I recall correctly, and because that particular part of the world gets very little rainfall, the rate of erosion, the rate of erosion was very, very slow. So these were amongst the most well-preserved ancient artifacts.
And I believe they were UNESCO. Was it UNESCO?
They were listed with someone, yes. Yeah, I remember that.
These were culturally significant, like I said, been there for over 1,000 years or something. And ISIS blew them up. And it just, like, thinking about that, I have no relation to this in any way, shape or form, but what a travesty to the Afghanistan nation. What a travesty.
But even putting that aside, look at photographs of Kabul in the 1960s and 70s.
I get so angry talking about Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Because, like, I've been to parts of the Middle East. I haven't been to Afghanistan. Obviously, I'm not going to travel to a war zone, but there are parts of it that are just so breathtakingly beautiful. Some of their mosques, some of their heritage, just beautiful. And they are some of the most hospitable people I've ever encountered. Yeah. I loved my time in Egypt. I loved my time in Jordan. But there is, I'm being really careful with my words, the radicalization and the fundamentalist side of those religions has a real...
Not those religions, that religion. There is a specific problem here.
They have total disregard for anything other than that one-eyed fundamentalist mentality, and it comes at the cost of culture and history, and I just get so upset about this. And maybe I'm being alarmist, maybe I'm being extreme in this thought, but the idea of that happening to England just boils my blood, and it hasn't even happened yet. That's the point I'm trying to say.
So how does it feel now to be counted among cultural greats like Salman Rushdie? Now, that's a name that you don't know, and you don't know why you'd be counted among the greats like Salman Rushdie.
Do I have like a glassy look in my eyes?
So you, like Salman Rushdie, will now have a fatwa against you and a price on your head, dead or alive. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Look, this is the thing. I have plenty of Muslim friends. I have Muslim clients. I have no issue, but I have issue with that. And I see that because they don't care. And
I think we should have issue with that.
Yeah. The elusive they, there is a tone set here that really worries me. Like, let's take Stonehenge. We've never uncovered why Stonehenge exists. The idea that
I think a couple of lads got drunk and thought it'd be funny, and then 2000, however many thousand years later, we're like, whoa.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, you had the friggin' climate alarmists, Extinction Rebellion, or not Just Stop Oil go and throw, I think it was powder. But either way, how fucking dare you?
Yeah.
Right?
But respect, they don't understand anything about respect in that sense. But
maybe that's the crux of what I'm talking about. There just seems to be a decay around the concept of respecting things that aren't yours to touch. Maybe I'm just getting old.
Maybe you're getting old. You need to buy a house on a busier street than this one, so that you can stand on the grass and shake your walking stick at the kids as they go past.
Is that
on their
what's
hoverboards.
happening to me? Am I just getting old?
Possibly. Look, I've said before, I'll say it again. I'm looking forward to getting old because it is not socially acceptable for me to be young and grumpy.
I'll give you another example because I love giving real world analogies, because some people are like, oh, Carly, it's a bunch of stones. What are you worried about? Imagine if someone blew up the pyramids. Imagine we would be reeling. We would never get over it. Like the whole world would come together over that. I think there is not a single person on this world that would be like, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's just do it. They're taking up space. Do you know what I mean? But like, I'll give you a more local example. I come back to that burnt out car. this is an
Well,
example.
you can't touch the burnt out car. That's a cultural icon now.
Well, it is. It is. It's part of the Melbourne.
And have you seen that video that chick made? It went viral.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. It'd be terrible if like they actually did something about it.
Mm.
But like the burnout car is a really good example of this. We have gotten to a point, and I challenge some of you guys listening to this to recognize in yourself where you're like, pardon me, not my problem, not my monkey, not my circus, whatever, you know. We are now walking past this decay, and there's an account that followed me the other day, and they're talking specifically about Geelong and how the local council is extracting all this money to pay all these really inflated pay packets of the people part of the Greater City of Geelong Council, and they're going around Geelong highlighting all the things that council should be doing that aren't doing. Niche, I know. But what I'm saying is, you know, for example, I'll give you an example of a photo they put up. It was of a bus shelter that's just rusting in decay and clearly is a bit of a hazard, you know. Nothing gets done about it. But also, how many people walk past that same bus shelter every single day? Like maybe have looked at it, maybe haven't looked at it. I would argue that, yes, we can get angry at the councillors, we can get angry at the politicians, we can get angry at all the so-called policymakers. But why aren't we angry at each other for accepting this? We're like,
The tragedy of the commons strikes again. I'm gonna have to make a reading list for you, right? Maybe that's how we can.
I'm already struggling with like Dostoevsky.
This
like,
is how we can financially support the podcast. I'm going to put together like a reading list for Amazon, and then everyone who watches is going to have to like buy all your books from through our reading list, so we get a commission on it. The tragedy of the commons is what you're talking about there, where, and this is why libertarians are so big on private ownership. If everything was privately owned, we know who the problem is.
Yes.
If something is publicly owned, everyone else is the problem, never ourselves. As soon as, and we see this even in something as simple as if you own an apartment in an apartment building, you will clean inside your apartment. You will not clean the foyer.
Yes.
Right? On your level. It might be directly in front of your door. It might be you and your next door neighbor, whoever walk past it, but you're not going to clean it because that's not your problem. We pay body corporate fees so that someone else does that.
Yeah.
Right? And so as soon as it's common property, it's nobody's property.
Yeah.
And that's where you end up with these sorts of
I
problems.
always like my favorite example of that. It's a bit similar, but sorry, it's not as similar, but is the nature strip war. And I see this around the corner here.
Yeah.
So one of our neighbours will literally manicure the lawn with like nail scissors.
Yeah.
And the person next to it, not so much. And there is very clearly like where his fence line is, he stops and he stops within a millimetre of it.
Yeah.
And you can see he's gotten down there. He's like,
Dead straight line. Yeah. Yeah.
and I just think, not my issue. Like it's an extra 3 meters. To be honest, if it bothered him, he could just do the 3 minutes. It wouldn't take him much longer. But I think my point
I think
is
that contrast, for people like that, the contrast is part of the point.
100%. It's like, I mowed like my lawn. You clearly didn't. But like back to the burning car, like the council worker had to mow around it, and obviously so because the grass was growing up under the car. But when we're in moments of tragedy, right, like when we're seeing whether it's floods or bushfires in Australia, I've talked about this and I love this about Australians. We'll come together and we'll pool our resources and we'll do it together.
And then the government will seize those resources and completely fuck it up.
Right? Why aren't we doing more community-based working bees? We know the council's a problem, but how hard would it be?
Lawyers.
Okay.
Lawyers. There are people that have done things like filling in potholes and other stuff like that. Instant liability issues. Lawyers get involved. Correct.
I'm getting so angry.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've been saying for a while, we are deeper down the whirlpool than people think we are.
Yeah. Have I told you the story on the podcast about G bottoming out one of his rims? So we were driving, G used to live out Lilydale way, and we were coming back from the Yarra Valley and it was dark and there was a huge pothole that we did not see. And he was driving and all of a sudden we've gone bang into it. And I think we hit it at like 70 Ks or something.
Yeah.
But it bottomed out it completely
took the chip out of the rim.
Destroyed the tyre.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, like, imagine hitting that at 100.
Yeah.
You'd end up in a ditch, if not worse.
Well, this is why I realise now, having moved out of the city, why people in the country are all in these high-riding, big-wheeled, off-road tired vehicles. It's not because they're necessarily always off-road. It's because the roads, as soon as you get off the freeway, are shot.
Oh, I will die on this hill. I feel so safe in my Jeep.
Yeah.
The idea of, like, a girlfriend of mine has I think it's the Barina, like a little runaround.
Yeah.
That thing's a death trap. Sorry if you drive one. Having gone from a big car into that, I feel like I'm in a go-kart.
What was that, like 1960s or 70s, like horror thriller movie that was the guy on a road trip and he had that truck would keep on catching up with him? Oh, wow, before your time. I'm showing my age, everybody. Someone in the comments tell me what the name of this movie was. The whole movie was around basically this guy who's on a road trip on a winding kind of California canyon type of road. And there's this truck driver who just decides to have it in for him. And I won't spoil the ending, but the whole movie is just him sweating, basically trying to outdrive this car and outdrive this truck, and his car's overheating and he's having other issues and challenges, has to stop for fuel and blah, 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 right? Big psychological thriller. It was a big movie at the time. Your Jeep to a Holden Barina would be that. You'd be coming up behind. It's like they'd look in the mirror and just see these chomping teeth like this, just ready to consume.
If I had my way, like, so G and I have been looking at Dodge Rams.
Oh, yeah.
Or Silverados. Yeah. I am a gas-guzzling American-made girl.
F-350,
Julie
rear
axle. If I could drive a monster truck on the road, I would. I love it.
So I just saw the other day the Toyota Tundra, which I didn't know they were bringing into Australia. That's the Toyota equivalent dual cab big ute thing. Too big for Australian markets. What's hilarious, so I'm looking at upgrading to a bigger family vehicle. I've got 3 kids plus a dog, and then when I travel to speak somewhere, I want to take the family and some T-shirts and some books, and maybe we're staying overnight, we need luggage. I need a bigger car. So I've been looking at the Hyundai Palisade because you can get them secondhand for a pretty good price, and they won Car of the Year when they came out. They're not fancy. They're a big family vehicle, but they do a good job of being that, right? And I'm looking at it going, this is the biggest bang for your buck you can get. It's among the biggest, SUV type vehicles you can get in Australia. And then I start watching reviews, and of course there's not a lot of Australian reviews, so I watch some American reviews, and they're like, oh yeah, this is a really good contender in the mid-sized category. And I'm like, what? This is the biggest I can get in this country.
The size of an Escalade?
So I went and I watched some of the reviews of what they call full size, and I'm like, holy moly, that's a minibus.
An Escalade is like a freaking
It's a bus. Yeah.
Every time I used to go to America, I used to hire either an the bigger the car, the better.
Yeah.
I had an Escalade, I had a Silverado. The Escalade was my favorite.
Give me a fully blacked out
That's
Escalade.
What it was.
Yeah, fully blacked out,
so
everything,
cool.
Black badges, black rims, the whole lot.
I think we have a version of it here, but in America there's a app called Turo, and it's basically you just hire someone else's car. And I'd go on Turo and I'd try and find like the most American
badass
things. And, I had a Silverado, I had a Camaro, I've had the Escalade. Like I said, that was my favorite. I had an SRT Jeep at a point.
Oh, nice.
And they're just fun because in America you just drive so far.
It's just outrageous.
And it's just, oh God.
Like American cars in America suddenly make sense. Over here we mock them.
Yeah.
You see the trucks on the highways in Texas and you're like, oh, I get it now.
I
get it. Like completely makes sense.
As I said, I have big wheels on my Jeep and I have a lift kit. And that's the biggest I could make it to fit under conventional car parks.
So have I ever showed you the video of Robert Breedlove's?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So Robert Breedlove, big Bitcoin guy, he put me on his podcast when I was in Florida, and he showed me his personal truck. And it was either a 350 or a 450 or a 550. It was like one of these stretched long Julie rear wheels lifted to the high heavens, massive stonking V8. It was hilarious. And when we went to a big shopping center, and he had to park across 4 parking spaces. And they have big parking spaces in America. Yeah. He needed 4 of them.
Yes.
And he just plonks it right in the middle of all 4.
So we've been looking at the Ram, and the Ram seems to be finished nicer.
Okay.
They're both good, but the Ram seems to be the one that we're looking at.
Yeah.
But I have said to G, it has to be the TRX. I want that Hemi supercharged V8.
Yeah.
I won't really settle for less.
The rumble from the exhaust and the whine from the supercharger put together, that's a good place to be.
I need people to know we're coming, and I want them to be mad about it.
I just put up today, You keep talking for a moment.
Okay.
I just put up some instructions. I'm a libertarian, but I will damn well order everybody around when I
did see this. It's so much more. Do you know what though? As I said in the Jeep, I feel so safe. If I hit a kangaroo, I'd be a bit annoyed because it would smash my bumper.
Yeah.
I don't have to be worried that I'll write my car off. And I say that as the girlfriend I was talking about. The reason she got the Barina is she had, I can't remember what she had either. It was something Suzuki, but it was like the itty bitty Suzuki.
Oh yeah.
And
like
she
a
hit
Swift or even
smaller,
like an Alto, I think was their
Is that what it was?
I'm not sure, but
it was teeny tiny.
Yeah.
And she was traveling and she was out somewhere Ballarat way and she hit a kangaroo.
Yeah.
Didn't just write the car off. She's lucky she didn't die.
Yeah.
Smashed the car windscreen.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was a red. and just totaled the car. And I'm like, if that was the Jeep would have been like, bang, see ya. You know, like the came.
Look, a red would still, it'd put a ding in your
Oh,
bull
yeah.
bar.
I'd be annoyed with the front bumper be a bit mangled, but it wouldn't write the car off.
Yeah. All right. So this is which one? Which camera? All right. You can't see it. All right. So it says it's got a picture of a couple of good-looking butchers with big lumps of some cut-up animal in front of them, and it says, "You will eat the steaks. You will drive your gas guzzler. You will heat your home. You will use cash. You will travel at your leisure, and you will disobey the globalists."
Yes.
I'm like, that's an order.
I would like to use the gas. I am terrified of the 4-digit bill, though.
Well, look, filling up the tank in one of those things is going to be unpleasant.
Oh, no, I meant the gas in my house.
Oh, the gas in your house.
Yeah.
So, sticking with the gas in the car, sorry, we're talking America, so my brain went to like American gas.
Gas.
I said when Trump came in, petrol's going to stay, the price of petrol's going to stay down for a while. Well, sure enough, here we are, months in, it's sitting there.
I saw it at $1.61 yesterday, which is fairly low for where I live.
So there's a place up near me that does the cheapest petrol I've seen, and they're regularly in the 150s.
Do you know what annoyed me the most, not to segue over to Dutton quickly, but is that policy that was stolen from the Libertarians, essentially. You know, they're taking the 25% excise off.
Yeah,
I'm
for
like,
1 year.
Abolish it.
Yeah, correct.
You've just literally admitted to everyone that you could do without it. Take it off.
Yep, but he can't do that because that would blow a bigger deficit in the budget. And he's not willing to cut spending because he tried. Remember how he promised? He said he was going to fire a couple of tens of thousands of bureaucrats, and then he got completely outmaneuvered. I think he got destroyed by his own party. I think his own party, his own campaign team destroyed him. They didn't want him to win. And as soon as he backflipped on that policy and the work from home stuff, which he wasn't making everyone work from home, it was just the bureaucrats. As soon as he backflipped on that, he was done.
I thought I saved this. This was a really interesting graph. Again, not on the podcast thing, but whatever. When have we ever stuck to
Do you have to write down a time code for this one?
No, probably. So it was basically a graph of how inflated or bloated our public service is.
Oh, yeah.
By like a lot.
Yeah.
I think the country under us was Britain.
Right.
But like Australia is so far in the front.
Yeah.
It was terrifying. And I was like, no wonder none of them want to vote Liberal.
Yeah. Well, somewhere around, depending on exactly how you run the numbers, you'll get a different result. But approaching approximately 50% of all Australian households now depend on money from the government on a regular basis, like just to get to the end of the month. Whether that's in the form of a salary from a government department, might be teachers or nurses or police officers or bureaucrats of some sort, whether that's some form of welfare payment, some sort of subsidy, some sort of business, maybe they run a business, but the business depends on government contracts in order to survive. More than half of Australian households are dependent now on government money in order to make ends meet. Yeah. And once you cross that threshold, you cannot, in a democratic system, get rid of that problem. Yeah. You are going to go deeper into that problem until there is some form of a collapse or a correction that forces everyone back out of it. And my fear is that the evidence, I've been warning about this since 2012, I think it was. I did my video on taxes, which was the first time I warned about this publicly. And 13 years later, I'm afraid that we've now crossed that threshold.
I try and be optimistic, but there's moments where I sit here and go,
I'm having a real hard time being optimistic compared to normal.
I'm having a hard time being optimistic because, as I said, I check the temperature in the comments and I go, yeah, wow.
Yeah, I'm starting to come across to the accelerationist point of view.
Yeah, I am there. And look, that's part of us doing the whole online thing as well. Like, you've got to get to a point where you're looking after yourself. The idea of me being beholden to either an employer or the government terrifies me.
Well, think about what I do. And if, and they certainly will, Albo says, well, I have a mandate to bring back the disinformation bill. Is what I do viable in an Australia with a misdis bill
Absolutely
in
not.
place? I have to go to America just to be able to continue to commentate on Australia.
Well, G and I have talked about that. We're like, he's like, Albo's back in now. Like, we need to be ahead of this and know what's happening because there's going to be a part where your safety is actually in question here.
Even if it's not my safety, that's maybe a little bit melodramatic, although maybe not. But even putting that aside, just my ability to be effective and say what needs to be said, it becomes untenable if I'm still in Australia.
Well, we've already kind of survived the censorship era of COVID. We somehow made it through. We
survived that. I managed to never lose an account through that.
Yeah,
but boy, I had to be really careful how I said what I said.
Well, this is the thing, and I've said this too because there's so many platforms on the far right, I mean the fringes of the right, who, you know, like Rise Melbourne, we've talked about him before, who are like diabolically like nihilistic and the world's ending and we're all fucked.
Yeah.
Those accounts have like version 7, version 12, new account, backup, whatever, right? I've never had to do that because...
Oh, they're trying to get rid of me. They're trying to silence me. No, mate, you're just an idiot. You are actually just an idiot.
100%. Yeah. I have still got the same Instagram account I've had since 2010.
Yeah.
I did get booted off Facebook, but not. This was before COVID. I have no idea why I got booted off Facebook. Yeah, right. Zero. Anyway, my point is there are ways of saying what needs to be said without having to be so...
But it's still incredibly dangerous that we have to do that.
Yeah.
Like that is incredibly dangerous.
Oh, I agree.
And
but there's always a way.
Well, but as AI becomes more sophisticated and increasingly these platforms are creating transcripts and then running AI over everything that gets said, it's going to get harder and harder to avoid all of that. And I'm just waiting for the day when they go, right, we're gonna run it retrospectively.
Yeah.
You not only are we introducing a law that says you can't say mean things about people for whatever attributes, but we're going to run it retrospectively over all of your history. Right?
What's interesting about the Miss Dis bill, though, is that would actually get people like Abbie and Clem caught up in it.
Yes, it would. And I would strongly advocate for really aggressive lawfare against those people, because only if all sides are screaming bloody murder will we actually see something like that reversed.
Well, it's so interesting because obviously people live in their echo chambers, and I talked about this last week when we were talking about the election, is... You know, particularly if you're on X or something, right? You see what you want to see and it's always confirmed back to you.
Yeah.
But I encourage you guys to sort of have a look at the other side, because they are saying exactly what we're saying, just with their own twist to it. They're saying that the media is all biased to the right, it's all Murdoch. I'm like, are you joking? Are you joking?
So I got a reminder. I talk about the echo chamber issue all the time, but I got a reminder of it recently. I don't know why, but I got served a flat earth post. And
they're my favorite.
I jumped in and kind of mocked it and had a bit of fun. And now because I interacted with the Flat Earth page, I'm getting all these suggested Flat Earth pages. I had no idea that there were that many out there.
Oh, it's huge.
And I'm sure that at least half of them are run by people who are taking the piss for the views and the ad revenue. Like they're 100%. Literally just monetizing the idiots, and they don't believe a word of it themselves. They're just monetizing the idiots.
It's like shooting fish in a barrel.
It's amazing to watch. And now I'm like, I don't want to interact with this, because then I'm going to get fed even more. But then I had this period of time I was getting fed all this Greens nonsense. So I started blocking the pages because it's all this just nonsense stuff. And because I had to interact with the page in order to block it, I feel like I started to get even more.
Yeah.
So it's like blocking them was having the reverse effect, because it was just serving me all the other ones.
It's weird how all of a sudden something pops up in your algorithm. I had the Aussie neo-Nazi people pop up in mine.
Oh, right.
And I don't know where they came from.
Yeah.
I didn't, and I think, I do know how it came. David Limbrick actually brought this to my attention. There was like a news article that someone had shared, and I had shared it. And it was from a page called, what's it called? The Noticer.
Yeah.
And David Limbrick messaged me. He's like, just so you know, they're affiliated with neo-Nazis.
Yeah, I didn't know that either until probably the same controversy.
Idea.
Yeah,
and it had nothing to do. It had nothing to do with like neo-Nazis at all. It was about something totally different.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. And then sure enough, like within a week, like all these people that like Joel Davis, who I think is a known neo-Nazi. I don't know.
Don't even know.
And I had never even, I've heard of it, but I didn't know there was a world out there.
So what's hilarious was I'm related to people that work in security and prisons and that sort of stuff, and they have to fill out forms around who they know and if there's any sort of conflicts of interest, so to speak, in their relationships. And so apparently one of them, who never really liked me, decided that I was a potential risk. And so they got instructions that they had to ask me a bunch of questions about who I knew.
Oh.
And in order to see how extreme I was, to see how he needed to then cut me off or handle me in his personal life in order for him to have the job that he had, which wasn't even an impressive job. And so he comes to me, and with his very snooty kind of arrogance, he says, "What do you know about Thomas Sewell?" And I went, "Oh, I mean, he's one of the greatest sort of political philosophers of our time, a prolific author and a wonderful communicator." And he's like, I'm like, so I grabbed my phone because clearly something wasn't communicating here.
Yeah.
I grabbed my phone. He's a very elderly African-American man who has been a prolific author and is a wonderful communicator. I'm like, this is the guy I'm talking about. What are you talking about? Apparently there's a guy, he's an Australian neo-Nazi with a very, very similar name.
Oh.
And so he'd said whatever name, and I'd heard...
Yeah. I was just like, when you said Thomas Sewell, I was like, I've seen...
Thomas Sowell or Sewell. One of them's Sowell, one of them's Sewell. I can't even remember which one's which. And I'd literally never heard of the guy. And so for me, it was like, well, you're asking me about this African-American articulate, philosopher, political philosopher. That's who you're like. Why are you asking me about him? That makes no sense. You're an idiot. You know nothing about any of this stuff. This is a really weird question.
Yeah.
Turns out, no, he was asking, and that's how little I know about all this stuff.
It's weird how you stumble across things and you sort of look and you're like a little curious. You go, you're like, that's probably more than I need to know.
And people assume that, because I make videos and I commentate on politics, I know all about all that stuff. It's like, no, I'm sorry. The guy that builds the house doesn't have to swim in the septic tank. Like I can work on a different area. Yeah. Thank you very much.
It's actually really hard because like back on the comments thing, every now and then they're like, oh, she's illiterate or she doesn't know this or she whatever. Like last week, right? Like, I made your blood boil when I said Nietzsche.
Yeah, Nietzsche. Yes. Yes.
Nietzsche.
Please don't repeat.
No. Yeah. I will never forget that because I have been sufficiently humiliated enough.
I'm sorry.
I didn't
mean to sick all the trolls on you.
No, but do you know what I find really interesting is I think people need a reminder every now and then that we don't know all things about everything.
Yeah.
And it's very likely that even in your adult life, you're going to stumble upon things that you aren't familiar to.
All the time.
And you've never heard that pronounced before.
Yep.
I'll give you an example. I remember when I was younger, I was reading the Harry Potter books and it was Hermione's name. I have never in my life seen the word Hermione.
Sure. Yeah,
never heard anyone say the word Hermione.
Yeah.
And in my head, I can't remember what I thought it was. I think it was like Hermione. I don't know, like something And then when I heard Hermione as the name, I was like, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea how to I was like, Gil San.
Yeah. It turns out Pierre, I was calling him Pierre Polivieri.
Yeah.
Is Pierre Polyev.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same thing. I'm reading his name all the time.
Yeah, same.
I'm watching interviews with him speaking, but he doesn't say his own name.
Yeah.
And so, no, I hadn't heard it. Until I did.
Like,
and I'm like, oops.
Yeah. And so I was just like, I was getting torn apart in the comments. I was like, have you guys never learnt something new? Imagine if you spoke
or learnt something from reading.
Yeah. Imagine if you spoke to a 5-year-old who's trying to like sound out the books like today. Oh, you're an idiot. How can you not know how to say today?
Oh, but even not a 5-year-old. It's just like if all you do is scroll TikTok and you learn everything you know you learnt from hearing, then of course you're going to know the pronunciation.
Yeah.
But if you're actually reading and taking in content via multiple different formats and forms, sometimes your pronunciation is not going to be right.
I think I've said this on the podcast before. I can't remember. We talk about so much stuff. But I've got the top 100 books of all time list.
Yep.
And I'm trying to go through and read them. And I've had Crime and Punishment on my desk for years.
Skip it.
I cannot get it. It's Dostoevsky, right?
Crime and Punishment is...
War and Peace is Tolstoy. Crime and Punishment is Dostoevsky. Pretty sure.
I'm going to leave that to you because I actually can't remember. Yeah.
The reason I bought Crime and Punishment because it's one of the books on the list, but Jordan Peterson quotes it regularly.
Yeah.
And he goes off on his long-winded tangents, and I was like, all right, that's it. I'm buying it. It's this.
I haven't read it either. Right.
It is,
and I probably never will.
It is
like I'm sure it's a great book, but I probably never will. Yeah.
And every time I pick up a page, I've read that page 4 times. I'm like, it's not hitting my brain. Let's go one more time. And then I get frustrated. Like, for example, Jane Austen can be a bit hard, but once you're in the mind, you're like, oh yeah, it rolls off the tongue.
You kind of get it. Yeah.
But it's interesting, though. Like I'm now reading all these philosopher books, right? Yeah. That one I told you about. I don't dare say the name ever again. There's language in there that we don't use anymore.
Yeah, correct.
It was written in the 18th century. So there's words that I honestly don't know how to pronounce.
Yeah.
And I don't know the meaning of. And so beside my desk, I've got like literally a thesaurus. I could use the internet, but like there's something that you retain this knowledge a lot more if you're doing it the manual or the analog way. And there's something about using a thesaurus and then writing the word down or something like that I could type it into Google and I'll literally forget it in 2 minutes. I don't retain that information.
Yeah. So this is really interesting because vocabulary is how we communicate. Mm-hmm. Communication, the ability to talk, is how we think. There's been a lot of research into how people with different native tongues think very, very differently, and how someone becoming bilingual opens up new thinking pathways for them because they have language. Even though we don't necessarily think in words, we think along pathways that are established through language. And one of the really interesting measures of civilization and sophistication is the breadth of someone's vocabulary. The number of words obviously being the easiest metric, but also the array of meanings contained within the words that they have access to in their everyday life. We are losing words. We're losing words very quickly at the moment, and AI is accelerating that loss because it, as a language learning model, it tends to it's trained to talk in a way that the majority of people are going to understand, which means the words that are falling out of use, it never uses, and so it accelerates the rate at which they fall out of use. Yeah. what's interesting is if you go back to, let's take Shakespeare, who famously invented so many different words that then came into popular usage and idioms and expressions that we have to this day. And a really interesting metric of civilization is whether the vocabulary is expanding.
Yeah.
And generally at that point, the civilization is also expanding. It is becoming wealthier. It is on the up and up. Or whether the vocabulary is contracting.
Yeah.
And that says something about what's happening with the civilization. And we are very much there right now.
It really bothers me. And I've actually called myself out on this, right? You know, when I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to do my master's. There is so many easier ways to do it now. Like the last time I did a degree was 20 years ago, but now like you've got ChatGPT and Grok.
Jump online, go to Fiverr and pay Rajesh to write your doctoral thesis for you.
Well, not only that, like, you know, you don't necessarily even need to read these articles. Hey, ChatGPT, summarize
summarize
this.
it, yeah.
And I've like a lot of it is time poor, and I call myself out on this. I'm like, oh, I'm tired, or I don't have time. Like, no bullshit. You are doing this degree, do it properly.
Yep.
And so I printed all these things. I bought, like I told you, I bought that book, and I'm trying to read it, and I'm like, God, this is a muscle I haven't used in a while.
Yep.
Sitting here reading without picking up my phone.
Yes.
And I find it really hard. Like when I go off my social media, like over Christmas, I always delete social media for like the longest I've done was 6 weeks last year.
Yeah.
And it was great because the first week you feel a bit like, oh shit. And then all of a sudden it becomes normal. And then all of a sudden you have so much time in your day.
Yeah.
It is really hard to, once you have it back in your life, be like, oh yeah, no, I'm not touching it today.
Down, yeah.
And so now
I'm doing a detox for 3 days starting tomorrow.
Are you?
Yes, I'm going away to somewhere with no phone reception.
Yeah. Oh, that's even better.
I did it 6 months ago. It was amazing. I'm doing it again. And I want to try and do it twice a year, a couple of days
The
at
best
a time.
thing I do is over Christmas, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to go 2 months.
See, I couldn't do that because that's how I earn my living, but I can do a few days at a time.
There are caveats. Like if you, like for example, I have never done it.
Like Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. But besides that.
No. I was going to say, like I've never done this whilst I have a YouTube channel. So that might be a weird one.
Yeah.
I don't really put, it is social media, but I don't put YouTube in that category. Because I would still watch YouTube.
See, I kind of put all screens into the same category. It's just like screens, no screens. That's the line.
Okay,
for me.
that's a bigger barrier.
Yeah.
For me, it's like my time sink. I look at the screen time, and Instagram and YouTube are my biggest.
Yeah.
And X is now up there, and I'm like, okay, well, YouTube. I'm generally watching YouTube for information.
And there is a place for recreation.
Yeah.
Don't despise recreation.
Yeah.
There's a YouTube series of this guy building the Ultima RS, the car that I hope to build one day with my son. I've already watched the whole thing once. I'm watching my way through it a second time. It's just I enjoy watching.
Do you have an aerial connected to your TV?
No.
Neither do we.
No, haven't in years.
Yeah, I haven't had one for over
since
2000
years. And I would say since 2019 at least. We haven't had an aerial.
Mine was from 2014, and it wasn't deliberate. It was just literally this house didn't have an aerial port where the TV was, and then
I plugged in the internet to the TV directly and realized I didn't care about the aerial anymore.
And like, you know what's funny is I was trying to watch The Handmaid's Tale the other day because I genuinely have liked The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
And it's on SBS On Demand. And I was like, how do I watch SBS? And I was like, and I literally typed in how to watch SBS. And I was like, we don't have an aerial here.
Yeah.
Or we do, it's just not plugged in. So I was like, okay, I don't know how to get onto free to air. And then, okay, so there's an app, whatever, go on the app. And then, unfortunately, when you're using the app, it doesn't matter if it's 7 or 9 or whatever, they have ads. I have not seen those ads in forever. I couldn't even tell you the last time I saw an ad.
You know what is pissing me off no end right now is that the paid streaming platforms that we paid money for are now introducing ads.
Because they're not making enough money.
And I feel absolutely betrayed. I mean, it was obvious that it was going to happen and people were predicting it. I wasn't one of them, but there were people right from the get-go said, yeah, this is where this is going. The ads will come back. I just feel completely ripped off.
It's going to be worse than that. You know what? I kid you not, this is going to be the circle of life when it comes to streaming. We had cable, Foxtel, whatever, and you had 20 to 100 channels, and you paid for it however much, any channels you paid for that. And like Foxtel was notoriously expensive. It was like $80 to $100 a month.
Yeah.
But, you got all the channels.
You got all the sports and the movie channels and all that.
And then we went, that's too much money. We want to do that. So now you can have Netflix. And when I signed up to Netflix, it was $8.99. That's when I signed up to it.
Wow.
Spotify used to be $7.99, right? That's what you signed up to. You're like, $7? Yeah. Like, I remember the day.
That's how they get you.
My housemate told me about Spotify. It was 2012. And he's like, no, because I was massive into iTunes. And he's like, no, it's like this app and like the songs are there. And I'm like, what do you mean? How are they there? I don't understand how they're there. You have to buy them. He's no, they just play. And I remember thinking like, and he's like, it's like $7. I was like,
Yeah.
It still this day, it still doesn't make sense. Whatever, it works.
Yeah.
Anyway, so now what we have is, and G and I have this argument all the time because we're like, which streaming platform are we paying for this month? Because between Disney, Binge, Stan, Netflix, we go, oh, we should watch that movie. It's always on the one we don't currently have the subscription to. And we're allowed, we have Netflix ongoing and then we swap between one of the others. Anyway, so we wanted to watch something. Of course, it's on fucking Disney. We don't have Disney at the moment. So I was like, no, that's for later. We're on Stan at the moment. Anyway, what is going to happen is, and I've said this to myself, I spend $1,000 a month on subscriptions across my business.
Sorry. Did you mean to say $1,000 a month?
Yes, $1,000 a month on subscriptions.
How do you get to $1,000 in a month?
Adobe.
Yeah, $86.
CapCut.
Another 30 or something.
30.
I think. Yep.
ChatGPT.
I don't know what that is.
It's about
Sorry, I know what ChatGPT
40.
is, but okay, yep.
X Premium.
Yep, okay.
YouTube Premium.
Yep.
Studio Ninja.
I don't know what that is.
That's my CMS. Squarespace ×2.
Yep.
Flowdesk.
Oh, actually, you know what? You make a good point. I pay $250 a month for Shopify just so I can sell T-shirts.
Oh, it keeps going.
Yeah.
It keeps going.
Yeah.
And then Capture One. What else have I? God, there's so many. I can't keep
all
up.
the online. There's like the online drive ones, like OneDrive.
Yeah,
Microsoft
I was just going to say my Google Drive, my Apple
Okay, you
Drive.
can stop now. You can stop now. You point.
Yeah.
Listen, Carly, I'm not going to say this very often. You just taught me something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. The reason I say this, and I bring this up quite a lot on my own socials, is you don't notice until you see it all on on your profit and loss, and you
now I
go,
feel
"What
violated."
the shit?"
Yeah.
Like you're like, "Oh, it's only like $11." And every time something new signs up, like for example, there was a new software that was like, "This is going to save you this amount of time if you do this," and I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." It's only $20 a month, and then I thought to myself, "It's not $20."
Yeah. So I signed up to WeTransfer. Sorry, I didn't sign up. I've been using WeTransfer for years. And yeah, if you're doing small enough files, it's free and it keeps it for 3 days. And then I sent a file. I'm split between 2 laptops. One's a video editing laptop and one's my personal working laptop. And I was away from home and I needed this file in a hurry. And the only way to get it was that I'd sent it via WeTransfer, but the link had expired. Well, I could sign up to WeTransfer for $34 a month. And by doing that, that allowed me to recover the file because it was within 30 days. And I'm like, who is paying $30 a month for file transferring capabilities when you've also got all these other drive, options and everyone's got at least one of those ones, a Dropbox or something by now. Absolutely insane. Well, guess who's paying for it?
Yeah.
Because I needed that file.
Yeah. I did something recently where I had last year, I had a memory card corrupt. And then you can buy this thing that recovers the data. Yeah. And I was able to pull out all the raw files. Yeah, amazing. Even though I'd erased it. Yeah. And it saved my bum, but it was like $120. Yeah. And I was like, God, this is why these things exist, because it saved my butt.
Correct.
But yeah, when I talk about subscriptions, like the whole point I was going to say is when you realize on the paper, like we used to complain that Foxtel was $100. I'd give anything to go back to Foxtel.
Yeah. And then you get in there and we've got Amazon Prime.
Yeah, we've got Prime as well.
The free shipping is worth it for me.
Prime.
So that actually pays for itself in the form of the free shipping. But we're paying for Prime, and then half the stuff you want to watch you have to pay for on top. Buy this movie. And even like the classics, it's been out for 20 years. Buy this movie. $29.
Yeah.
What? I'm sorry. I already paid you to be able to be on your platform. And then that's how they keep you subscribing, because once you've invested over the course of a year, you might invest another couple of $100 into movies. Well, now if you don't maintain your subscription, you're going to lose all the movies you bought. So now they've actually got you.
Yeah, back in the day, you used to own the DVD or the VHS or the CD. You owned it.
Back in my day, we are getting old. Like this is proper old person talk now.
Well, it's crazy when you realize how much you spend just to be, and there's so many apps that will just save you like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'll sign up. I was like, yes, I do want that 5 minutes. All right, there's my $15. and then when I told G I spend $1,000 a month on subscriptions, he had the same reaction as you. He's like, what? And I was like, no, let me show you. And I was like,
so you are spending more on subscriptions than on petrol.
Yeah, that's a business overhead.
Terrifying.
Yeah. And the worst thing is like often like, you have these little ecospheres that you operate in. Like, for example, Canon and Apple is like my thing. And then I have DJI. But of course, Canon and DJI have their own software. And then there's like a software that's made to plug into that one, but not to this one. And then you need a bridge and then you need this. And you would have heard of Zapier.
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 Yeah, we call it Zapier. But yeah.
All those little links that it does.
Yeah.
Because, of course, nothing talks to itself because everything is so decentralized that you now need subscriptions for everything.
So my wife uses Zapier in her business to get between, Trello and this and that and the other one. Yeah.
It's infuriating. And even just like today, just before you got here, I was writing an email. I sent a newsletter out. If you want to subscribe, you can jump on my website. But I sent a newsletter out.
What is your website URL?
carlsjsoda.com. It's getting rebuilt at the moment as well. It will be better.
Mine needs a rebuild.
I'll happily do it for you if you pay me all the dollars. No.
Thank you.
But I hate newsletters. I hate just nonsense. Like, buy my shit. So I always try and write like a cool story or like give an anecdote or whatever. Yeah. And today's story was just part of my master's thesis. And I was like, YouTube actually works. I've had people go to my website and sign up and download my lead magnets or even buy some of my books. Great. So I was like, I'll grab my little subscriber list and re-import it back into Flowdesk because I've had a rise, and I think it was like 50 people. Great. And then Flowdesk is like, this is going to upgrade your plan. You'll now be charged $90 a month just for us to be able to send out your emails. And I was like, $90 a month?
Wow. Yeah, you got to be making and then people turn around and go, you're grifting. You're always trying to make money out of your blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Even on another one, Buzzsprout. So Buzzsprout is what I host our podcast on.
Also, sidebar, who comes up with these names? Buzzsprout, Zapier. Yeah. Anyway, continue.
So Buzzsprout is what is our podcast host. So that's where I upload it to.
Okay.
And then it goes out to Spotify and all apparently there are other platforms that people listen to stuff. I don't know what they are, but they're there.
Yeah.
And so it does all that for me. But because we put up 4 podcasts a month and they're over 2 hours, it's now costing me $90 a month to upload the podcast.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's all right. It's fine.
It's a good thing you made it money because you're such a grifter.
So when people are like, these two are grifting, I'm like, guys, this is costing me. Like, I have put in. And
that is insane.
I have put into this podcast and not made $1, $0, almost $18,000 into this podcast.
Okay. That's that.
So when you say I'm grifting, guys, I would love to be grifting right now.
So I was feeling pretty good about the roughly $2,500 I've put in right up until about now.
Yeah, when you add up like all the mics, the roadcast, the
all the online stuff, the lights and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I've the tripods and the cameras and this little desk. And then if I really wanted to try and add it all up, some petrol. It's cost me some petrol.
No, you make a huge. It's not a pissing contest.
No, I know. But when you actually stop, I mean, it's the same with $1,000 a month. You're right. Like when you actually stop and think about it. And if I actually stop and think about it, I've put in thousands, and I know you've put in way more than I have. Like that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, far out. No wonder we're poor.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because like
guys, buy our t-shirts. Tell us what designs you want, please.
No, because I often have this moment, and like again, it's superficial in thinking. I have to really challenge myself at times because it's easy to get in this is so unfair, and I'm like, all right, let's unpack why you're annoyed.
Yeah, and
then because I look at my bank account, like money comes in, it goes out, money comes in, and I'm like. I'm not trying to be brag, but I earn good money. Yeah. I just don't know where it goes. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, let's look at this.
Let's figure this out. Yeah.
And then, $12,000 a year goes literally to subscriptions.
Okay, I'm going to cancel my Adobe. You hold me to this because I've been meaning to cancel it because I don't use it anymore because I use CapCut.
Yeah.
You hold me to this. I'm going to cancel my Adobe before I leave your house today.
Do it, and then you can always use mine if you need it. But the point is, where was I going?
I don't know. And by the way, we're at the 2.5 hour mark.
This is how we ended. Yeah. Go look at how much you spend on subscriptions, guys. It'll horrify you. But it's so interesting when people are like, these grifters. I'm like, are you joking? This is sending me broke.
Can we just touch on what are the topics we haven't got to today?
They were as interesting. With Susan Lay. Do we care? I think you've done a video.
I've done a video on that. Go to @Topherfield on YouTube to find
that. So Susan Lay. We didn't talk about Peter Dutton's like little golden parachute.
Okay, so look, this is very easy to deal with. Politicians who became politicians before, I think it was about 2000 and early 2000s, get a golden parachute. They get a pension for life, and if you're a PM, you get a driver and some other perks. Most of that's been ended now, and new politicians just get a superannuation scheme, the same as everybody else. So that is a problem that is fixing itself, but it's good outrage bait. Every time a politician retires who's been around for long enough that they get the golden parachute, let's all be outraged again.
Yeah.
It's a problem that's been fixed. It's working its way out of the system.
Yeah. Because that was doing the rounds. And then this one I haven't gone deep enough into. Letitia James is under federal investigation. New York Attorney General Letitia James is under federal investigation for alleged mortgage fraud, including falsifying documents to obtain favourable loan terms for properties in Brooklyn, Norfolk and Virginia.
I know nothing about it, so we're going to have to put a pin in that for another time.
And then Trump, obviously, with the trade deals with China and
I've done a video on
also
that.
the big pharma stuff.
Big pharma stuff I need to look into. I don't know enough about that. So let's make that a project for this week because talking about RFK Jr. is always fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually would rather do a deep dive into that because they're talking
Yeah.
about banning pharmaceutical advertising, which like that would just wipe out the Democratic Party. They're done.
Well, and also the mainstream media.
Yeah, like you're done.
If they couldn't advertise drugs in America,
Bye.
all of the big mastheads gone
Yeah,
instantly.
literally.
It'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I was like, that's huge if they do that.
If they follow through.
Yeah. I didn't know that. Between New Zealand, and America, they're the only two countries in the world that allow pharmaceutical companies to advertise.
I knew it wasn't many. I didn't know it was just two.
Yes, the
but yeah,
two.
it's not many. And in America, they can make all kinds of claims they want, so long as they put the disclaimer at the end.
Yeah.
Your
See
penis
your
might
doctor.
fall off.
Yeah.
It's in really fast talking at the end. They can say whatever they want about it. And look, as a libertarian, I don't actually think in principle that there should be a problem with drug companies advertising. But drug companies benefit from so much government regulation that protects their profits, protects their intellectual property, and allows them to get away with murder.
Yes.
Not having liability for when your product kills people is a problem. So I've got no sympathy. I'm willing to put aside the libertarian angle because it's already a deeply illibertarian industry. So if they get banned from advertising, I'm not going to cry for them.
Do you know what's interesting? Like people often talk about thalidomide as like the example of when pharmaceutical companies like overplayed their hand and
That
killed
was
people.
one of many.
Yeah, right. So that's the one that most
poster
people know.
child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It goes so much deeper than that. Like there was radium. Radium was put in everything that would that was radioactive,
Yeah.
and so
That was the point. Yep.
there was a story, and just to like what I'm trying to say is this is an ongoing problem.
Gardasil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much more recent examples as well. This is an ongoing problem, not to mention the mRNA stuff. I mean, come on.
The radium stuff. Sorry, it was like what they called watch painters. So they used to paint the face of the watch with radium that made it glow in the dark.
Yeah.
And so they taught them the fine art of like
licking the brush,
licking the brush.
curling the tongue to give a nice fine point. Yeah.
And then so literally these women, because it was all women that did it, their
Jaws would
jaws
fall
fell off.
Very, very similar actually to early matches. The Strike Anywhere
Yes.
matches. The chemicals in
Phosphorus.
those were so bad that women deformities and skin issues and all like horrible nightmare kind
Seems
of
to
stuff.
keep happening to women.
On that happy note, let's end. No, but this is an ongoing problem. The pharmaceutical companies, the big American drug companies, are the largest criminal organizations in the world. And I can say that without fear of being sued because they have repeatedly paid. If you've got a list of the top 30 criminal fines ever issued against companies, I believe about 25 of the top 30 globally are drug companies.
Yeah.
These are criminal fines. In other words, we have found you as a company criminally guilty.
Yes.
Guilty of criminal behavior.
Yeah.
But because it's a company, we can't throw an individual in prison.
Yeah.
Isn't that convenient? And so they just charge them money, which are vast sums of money, but actually only a fraction of the profits they make. So it's really not a punishment at all.
What really struck me when I went to the US last was I was sitting there watching, free to air TV, and it was like, this guy smiling, and then back pain, rah, rah, and then like something else happened. This person, back pain, whatever, and then they reach, that's right, I'll get and they bring out the thing, and it's oxycodone. I was like, what? What? What the fuck am I watching?
Having said that, I think the fact that we lock up codeine and all that stuff is ridiculous.
Oh, no, I agree. But I never in my life had seen an ad for like opiates. And I was watching this and everyone was so smiley.
Have you tried heroin?
Yeah.
It takes
feel
away the
great.
pain. Yeah.
I was just like, wow. I had never imagined what a commercial for opiates would be like, but I imagine that's it.
Everyone's very happy. Yeah, weird that. Yeah. They look a lot like Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron, actually. It's come to think of it.
Cheshire cat grin. Yeah. But on that note, we've now been going 2:38.
Too long, I think, is the amount of time. Too long. But it's been fun, as it always is.
It is fun. We talked about a lot. What are the chances we'll be coming back next week to talk about the fallout of us talking about Abbie and Clem?
Probably. I hope so. Honestly, they would. Honestly, this is the thing. They want to come for me. They will increase the number of followers I have.
They'll come for me.
No, but they will increase the number of followers you have.
Yeah.
Right? You've got to make that mental leap. You let them fight over the chips.
I'm good with it now. I'm like, come at me. I mean, what else can you say? You've called me everything.
Correct. They've called you everything under the sun. There's nothing new they can put on the internet that isn't already there.
Yeah.
Okay? So they become irrelevant and you can soar.
Yes. Well, on that note, guys, if you haven't already, please go and follow the dedicated podcast channel, which is the Oddcast HQ, which is what you're watching this on.
Yes, of course.
And go follow Topher on.
Follow me. At Topherfield. Sorry, that was a nice. I completely missed my cue. At Topherfield.
And follow me at Carlz J Soda. And if you're interested in photography, that's what my personal channel is about.
Yeah.
Would love some support over there.
Yep.
And other than that, let us know in the comments, t-shirt wise.
Correct. What designs? Do you want us to do like funny slogans? Do you want just like a cool design that Carly works up? What do you want?
Yeah, and also like the litmus test for t-shirts is always like, would you wear that to the supermarket? Yeah. If it's too outrageous, you're probably not.
I think what we're saying is, tell me what you want, what you really, really want.
That's so bad.
But it's a great way to finish the show.
I'm just dying in shame and embarrassment. Great.
Come on, you could have joined in. I really, really want to.
Bye.